peaceful mountain city gives way to chaos inside sword shop, where armored men crowd aisles and seize blades. Store manager drops to his knees, begging them to stop and warning them not to touch swords. Warning earns only violence. One armored man slams manager down with brutal thwack, then declares no hard feelings because it is investigation. Long-haired knight raises sword as proof, claiming rumors say store does business with bandits. Manager protests from floor that blade is mass-produced model sold anywhere. Outside, townspeople whisper that knights are up to usual antics, while manager tries redirecting blame toward unregistered blacksmith outside city walls. Accusation takes shape around solitary black-haired blacksmith standing in tall grass. Voice claims he works alone in eerie silence outside guild control and says his name is Lutz, while his sharp eyes harden under suspicion. Manager presses harder, insisting Lutz must hide sinister reason for avoiding guild. Long-haired knight accepts bait and orders men to bring manager in on charges of selling weapons to bandits, then adds charge of betraying fellow man as rope tightens around manager. Knight dismisses Lutz with cold smile, saying visiting unregistered blacksmith outside walls would waste time because there is no money on him. Far from city, hammer blows ring from small workshop. As Lutz keeps forging in sparks and noise, hammer strikes steel again and again, beginning tale of blacksmith who crafted nameless katana. In his focused eye, bright reflection of work burns like promise. Inside glowing forge, Lutz shapes metal with steady hands, sparks flying across anvil. Caption carries tale onward, saying people became enchanted by katana's peculiar allure. Legend stretches across mountain towns and strange skies, saying this enchanting blade wandered through different periods and places, disturbing hearts of those it met. Lutz appears among those shaken by its pull, silent and sweating beside other unnamed faces. Back in forge, Lutz holds finished katana in awe. He says it is done, then admits this one turned out so well and marvels that it is exceptionally well crafted. Testing begins at once. Lutz grabs apple from bowl, tosses several into air with whoosh, then raises katana as fruit falls through workshop. Blade flashes upward and splits apple so cleanly that Lutz gasps. He says he did not feel apple weight at all when cutting it, stunned by how sharp katana is. Shock deepens into fascination. Holding weapon before him, Lutz wonders how something designed to kill people can be so beautiful, unable to take his eyes off shining edge. That beauty overwhelms him. Reflection or vision of smiling long-haired woman blooms along blade, and Lutz stares open mouth, thinking world's most beautiful woman stands right before his eyes. Enchantment pushes too far. Lutz suddenly finds blade tip near his mouth, panics at what he is doing, then stumbles backward as stool and tools clatter around him. Shaken, Lutz throws cloth over katana with flap, cutting off its pull. Sitting across from covered blade, he breathes hard and wonders if he has made something out of this world, with no idea what to do with it. Lutz weighs profit against danger. Ordinary blacksmith would happily sell such quality blade for high price, but he has no guild connections, and forcing sale could get him rejected, suspected as thief, jailed, and stripped of everything he owns. Fear settles in. Lutz admits he definitely does not want katana confiscated, then stares at cloth-covered blade and asks what he should even do, begging it to tell him what it wants. Answer comes as chaos at door. Woman bursts into workshop with loud blam, greeting Lutz by name, while he jumps in terror. Lutz recognizes her as Claudia and grumbles that she should at least knock before coming in. Claudia appears fully. Beautiful long-haired merchant with loose lips, known for buying weapons cheap from troubled blacksmiths. Lutz notes she is one of few people he talks to, then tells her ordered items are ready and she can check them. Claudia praises Lutz for finishing on time and pats his head like a good boy, while he endures it in silence. With sudden whoosh, she swings one axe hard, testing craft, and Lutz watches without surprise. Claudia studies axe and admits it is well crafted. Lutz says he takes pride in his work, so she decides to take all axes and tells him to help load them into her carriage, turning praise into labor. Lutz erupts, asking why he must carry 20 valuable heavy axes, while Claudia acts like frail maiden. He rattles carriage away anyway, calling her troublesome, but her eyes catch cloth-covered katana left behind. Claudia rushes back to Lutz and asks if covered blade is his new work. Lutz instantly blocks her, declaring it is not for sale. But Claudia smiles from shadow and says whether it is for sale is matter of negotiation between two parties. Claudia uncovers katana, and curved blade gleams with strange beauty. Her eyes widen, cheeks flush, and only one word slips out. Wow. Claudia asks if Lutz truly forged it, and Lutz answers she could not afford it otherwise, though showing her was not his plan. He needs to know how Katana looks to others, while Claudia lifts blade and murmurs, "Oh!" Claudia swings into playful stance, praising fine sword and saying holding it makes her feel like swordmaster. Lutz warns her to be careful, because mishandling it means more than cut, but she grins and says, fingers could be sliced off with mere brush. Lutz studies her closely. After normal silly banter, Claudia seems same as usual, so he wonders if what he saw earlier was illusion, and whether Katana truly deceives others. Doubt breaks when Claudia leans toward Blade with dangerous fascination. Lutz notices at once as her tongue nears edge, and Blade almost touches her gloved hand with sharp lick-like motion. Lutz yanks Katana away and pulls Claudia back in one hard motion. She crashes to floor with thud, complains that it was dangerous, and asks what he is doing. Lutz snaps that what she was about to do was dangerous unless she wanted to fork her tongue. Silence follows across workshop. Claudia sits stunned, unable to remember last few minutes, while Lutz holds Katana and tells her she just tried to lick Blade. Her reaction confirms his fear. He was right. Outside workshop, Claudia asks what Lutz will do with Katana since he has no way to sell it. Lutz carries boxed weapons and admits he sure does not know. In his mind, Katana becomes grim specter with mysterious power, captivating and deceiving people. While Lutz carries heavy crates, Claudia teases that Contrarian's outside guild must have it rough. Lutz snaps for her to shut up, but she keeps pressing, saying rich buyers for such high-quality blade are rare. When he asks if she knows anyone, Claudia smirks, already expecting question, while Lutz admits he is also trying to think up price for Katana. Claudia's merchant instincts flare with coins glittering around her. She says 50 gold coins, and if buyer is hardcore weapon enthusiast, it might even sell for 100 gold, leaving Lutz stunned. Lutz drops crate into carriage with loud kachak and mutters that price is insane. He says one katana could buy house in town, but Claudia laughs because none of it matters if he has no way to sell it. Claudia turns offer into teasing, asking why he does not give it to her and joking she could pay with her body. Lutz only asks if her body is worth house, so she laughs louder and says he would need at least 3 katanas to make it fair deal. Claudia finally leaves with loaded carriage, thanking Lutz for axes and promising to return after finding good way to sell katana. As wheels clatter away, she calls farewell, and Lutz watches her go with tired, faintly relieved face. Back inside workshop, Katana rests before Lutz like unsolved problem. He murmurs about sword worth 100 gold, then compares himself to it. Talented blacksmith who cannot turn profit, and well-crafted katana that cannot be sold. Since he cannot sell it, Lutz decides katana can serve as workshop guardian deity. Yet after days in town with nothing to do, frustration builds under bright sun until he groans, trapped between waiting and boredom. A week passes with no word from Claudia, so Lutz heads into town and complains she should have brought new order by now. At tavern, older bartender greets him as boss and jokes. He looks great. Lutz grumbles about Claudia, takes beer, and bartender suddenly asks if he heard news. News hits Lutz so hard, he spits beer across counter. Bartender says Claudia was thrown in jail, and Lutz shouts in disbelief, asking what he means. Bartender explains knights have been hunting bandits lately, but Lutz demands to know what that has to do with Claudia. Bartender says, captured bandits were questioned and claimed various merchants around town supported them financially. Many merchants were arrested at once, and Claudia was one of them. Lutz rejects idea at once, but bartender warns local knights are no better than thugs, so accusations are probably false. Bartender adds merchants can be released if they pay bail. Lutz's eyes sharpen as meaning sinks in. Knights arrest people on false charges, demand bail and profit from fear. When he asks what happens if Claudia cannot pay, bartender answers she will probably end up a slave. Thought of Claudia being sold at brothel chills Lutz silent. His fist clenches against counter, while he asks if knights would truly go that far for money. And bartender answers there is no point getting angry because their crimes go on and on. Bartender reads Lutz's anger and asks if he plans to pay Claudia's bail. Lutz lowers his head, then answers with bitter truth. Does he look like he has that kind of money? Bartender laughs that he surely does not, since Lutz has neither money nor work, or he would not be drinking there so early. Inside prison, silence rots with cobwebs, cold food, spilled bottle, and iron bars. Claudia sits bound at table, eyes dull and lips tight, trapped in filthy cell with no answer but quiet. Claudia glares through bars and curses prison's creepy state, asking if being too beautiful is crime. With wrists tied, She can barely drink from bottle and grumbles that knights should have at least loosened ropes so she could eat. Footsteps approach, and Claudia stiffens. Long-haired knight strides in with armored men, keys in hand, mocking her for being unable to pay bail. He says they cannot keep freeloaders around, then smirks that fortunately her looks are not bad, while Claudia recoils in fear. Claudia fights panic with quick words, warning that if higher-ups learn knights tried to assault townswomen, it would be bad for them. Long-haired knight pauses, then agrees damaging goods would be problem, before coldly declaring they will sell her to brothel and test her before that. Threat turns uglier as Knight grabs Claudia's face and whispers, "There are ways to taste her without damaging body." He says nobody will hear complaints of slave anyway, while armored men crowd behind him. Claudia trembles through tears but snarls she will murder him. Before Knight can go further, Lutz bursts into prison doorway and shouts for them to wait. Claudia cries his name, and Knights whirl in shock, demanding what guards are doing. While Lutz's steady eye says he has permission to be here, Lutz faces circle of armored men and says he came to pay Claudia's bail. Long-haired Knight mocks him, reminding him bail is 20 gold and asking if young man can afford it. Behind him, Claudia panics because Lutz admits he has no money, only something else. Instead of coins, Lutz unwraps katana. Curved blade shines across prison gloom, stunning Knights into silence. Claudia stares in horror, while long-haired Knight and his men realize he brought sword as payment. One guard instantly reaches for weapon, asking if Lutz wants fight. Another curses in confusion. But Lutz raises katana without attacking, and says he did not come to make mess. His proposal is clear. Release Claudia, and he will give them katana. Claudia cannot accept it. She shouts Lutz's name, and asks if he has lost his mind, reminding him katana is his most precious fulfilling work. But Knights here only value, asking if sword is worth 20 gold. Lutz answers yes without hesitation. Claudia screams for him not to be reckless, even lunging forward despite restraints. But Lutz stands firm with katana lowered, and says of course it is worth that much. Lutz suddenly sweeps katana through air with terrifying speed, strike flashing past everyone before sound can follow. No one is cut, but prison falls into stunned silence as blade stops pointed outward. Only bottle on table answers. Its top half slides cleanly away and rolls across stone, while long-haired Knight stares, rattled, realizing bottle itself never moved. Lutz holds katana steady, proving edge without spilling blood. Fear turns to greed. Lutz tells them if they pass up chance, they will never own katana this great, then smirks and calls them second or third sons of low-ranking noble families. Insult lands because truth is plain. Men like them could never buy such weapon with Knight salaries. Armored men whisper among themselves, admitting sword feels different and may even carry ominous charm. Long-haired Knight accepts value at last, spreads his hand, and tells Lutz to hand it over. Lutz refuses to surrender it first. He demands Claudia be brought right beside him, and long-haired Knight clicks tongue before yanking her forward. Then Claudia is shoved across cell, stumbling straight into Lutz's arms. With Claudia safe against him, Lutz silently mourns, giving away masterpiece, like marrying off cherished daughter to fool. Long-haired Knight stretches out greedy hand, demanding sword now, and Lutz grips scabbard hard because he has no choice. His final wish is that katana does its best on battlefield. Long-haired Knight snatches katana free and draws it, eyes widening as blade glints. Other knights crowd in, murmuring and begging to see or feel it, while Lutz stands with Claudia and declares bail has been paid. Then he corrects them sharply. It is not sword, it is katana. Back under open sky, Lutz and Claudia walk through busy market beneath city walls. Exhaustion hits them both after hellish day. Claudia says she is worn out, while Lutz admits he is hungry but wants bed and sleep more than anything. They descend steps together, silent weight still hanging between them. On city steps, Lutz finally notices Claudia still trailing him and asks why she is following, since her house is not this way. Claudia smiles too brightly and admits her carriage, and everything else were confiscated by Knights, then casually asks to rent room at Lutz's house, shocking him into a full panic. Lutz stammers that he is not refusing, but having Claudia stay at his place may not be okay. Claudia presses closer with teasing confidence, asking if he would rather make young maidens sleep in gutter. When he freezes, she jokes that living with beautiful woman would keep him from polishing his spear whenever he wants, and Lutz snaps at her to be serious. Mood shifts when Claudia lowers her eyes and asks seriously why Lutz saved her. She points out he even gave up precious katana. Lutz folds his arms, scratches his head, and after long silence can only answer that he does not know. Claudia refuses to accept that. From top of steps, she reminds him he basically threw away 100 gold, and she wants real answer. Lutz turns away, embarrassed, saying she is his benefactor. He disliked how knights handled things, and he had no one to sell katana to anyway. Then he admits there are many reasons, but he can sum them all in one sentence if she wants to hear it. Before Lutz can finish neatly, Claudia leaps onto his back with sudden thwop, nearly sending him downstairs. He yells that it is dangerous, but she clings close, face beside his, and softly begins with his name while he stammers in confusion. Claudia declares with sparkling confidence that he did it because he likes her. Lutz freezes, then blurts that she should wait, asking what happened to being serious. He tries to deny romantic feelings, but Claudia only giggles behind him. Then Claudia silences all protest by taking his face and kissing him. Lutz's eyes widen, sweat beating as stairway world narrows to her lips, her hand on his cheek, and quiet shock between them. After kiss, Claudia steps down first, boots tapping stone, while Lutz stands stunned behind her. She turns back with soft smile, and they face each other on steps. Tension now changed into something neither of them can easily name. Claudia smiles warmly and thanks Lutz for saving her, promising she will repay him for katana. Then, with usual teasing flair, she calls it deposit and offers to pay him back with her body if he wants it, leaving Lutz red-faced and sputtering. Even after nearly being assaulted and sold into slavery, Claudia refuses to break. Walking through town, she says it may be good thing katana ended up with those knights, because Lutz's work has now been unleashed upon world. Lutz can only ask what she means. Claudia explains katana. That strange will be flaunted, noticed, and talked about. Rumor will climb toward higher-ups, and soon people will ask who made it. She imagines richer, stronger buyers demanding one for themselves, while Lutz listens in stunned silence. Claudia's dream grows brighter. First-class knights and renowned nobles may desire Lutz's creations. Since good weapons often change hands among knights, buyers will eventually trace blade back to maker and red name engraved on it, Master Craftsman Lutz. Reality crushes Lutz. At once he starts shaking, then screams so loudly people in street jump, because he forgot to put his name on katana. Claudia falls silent too, and after long pause admits that is definitely problem. Back at workshop, Claudia now lives with Lutz and works as his salesperson, taking orders while he forges. Lutz accepts that because of his mistake, nameless katana cannot bring him fame, but it did save one person, so he does not regret giving it up. Even so, faint attachment still lingers in Lutz's heart as hammer rings against steel. Somewhere in town, older bearded man gazes at katana with feverish eyes and wonders where she is now, declaring his obsession love. Focus shifts to hero Ricardo, local lord's favorite adventurer. He is not burdened with defeating Demon King, but he is skilled enough to subjugate troublesome monsters, earn handsome rewards, and request weapons instead of gold. Chapter opens on Sir Ricardo whirling through cut logs, iron sword flashing so fast trunks split midair. He marvels at how wonderful and light blade feels, unable to believe iron sword can move like this. Behind him, older bearded man explains he placed weight reduction spell on sword so Ricardo can react quickly when surrounded by enemies. Ricardo answers with pure excitement, then thanks Mr. Gerhardt for such fine weapon. Caption names watching knight as high-ranking knight Josel and reveals his master, Gerhardt, is Spellforger. Gerhardt's craft unfolds through ritual and floating crystals. Spellforging is magic that grants weapons different effects through ceremony, and Gerhardt commands it with practiced hands as blades hover around him. Inside Grand Workshop, narration calls Gerhardt, Count's personal spellforger, and one of most skilled in country. After glowing ritual circle fades around finished sword, Gerhardt sighs in relief and says work is complete, then notices Josel at doorway and receives his quiet praise for day's labor. Josel steps inside and asks if sword on table is new reward for Sir Ricardo. Gerhardt confirms it, lifts blade with proud swing, and asks what Josel thinks. Josel praises his master's unquestionable skill, then asks what spell was cast. Gerhardt answers, weight reduction. Josel hesitates, but Gerhardt explains he has revised weight reduction spell and made sword even lighter than before. For weapon that size, less weight should help most, especially with Ricardo's fighting style against groups of monsters. Josel is impressed that Gerhardt considered all of that, and Gerhardt laughs proudly. Sure, young Ricardo will cry tears of joy. Looking over castle, Josel thinks his master improved spell performance in very short time, and that Gerhardt's fame will surely spread farther. Before gathered crowd, local Lord Count Maximilian Zander praises Ricardo's latest subjugation mission. Ricardo humbly says he only did what had to be done. Then Count announces reward. Masterpiece forged by Country's top blacksmith, and spell forged by Gerhardt, as Maid rolls sword forward on cart. Ricardo accepts reward with formal gratitude, then asks Count Maximilian Xander for permission to inspect blade. Once allowed, he draws sword from cart, and polished steel flashes so brightly crowd begins murmuring in awe. Light bursts from sword, and spectators praise its brilliant shine as another wonderfully crafted weapon. Yet Ricardo's face tightens, Josel notices with alarm, and Gerhardt's proud expression freezes as blade reflects something unsettling in Ricardo's eyes. Ricardo still thanks Gerhardt for fine sword, but his hand clicks blade back with quiet finality. Josel catches hidden disappointment and realizes Ricardo's gratitude sounds exactly same as before, even though Gerhardt's spell is stronger than last time. Crowd erupts in applause, praising Gerhardt's craftsmanship and wishing for spell-forged swords of their own. Josel understands Ricardo will not be truly happy after that look. While Gerhardt quietly concludes he has fallen into mediocrity, Gerhardt's pride twists into fury, he admits. He grew arrogant without noticing his own stagnation, and Ricardo's disappointed glance makes him see how pitiful he has become. Josel realizes his master's attitude has changed completely, and not in good way. Back in workshop, Gerhardt explodes, kicking sword after sword across floor, while shouting that each one is not good enough. He claws at his head, insisting spell results depend greatly on weapon quality, so mediocre swords can only carry mediocre spells. Josel tries to soften blow, saying those are all excellent swords any average knight would want. Gerhardt rejects that completely, stomping through scattered blades, and declaring that anyone satisfied with passive, dull work will remain average. Gerhardt's standard sharpens into obsession. Only unique, unparalleled work deserves title of first-rate craftsman. After grim silence, he collapses among discarded swords, muttering he must soon craft another sword for Ricardone that will astonish that brat, or he will not sleep. Gerhardt's desperation explodes into fantasy, clutching Josel while imagining perfect blades shining before him. He cries that somewhere in world there must be most excellent sword, one able to spark his creative urge, and if only he could obtain it, he could craft greatest work of his life. With that burden placed on him, Josel stands alone in busy mountain city as Gerhardt's words echo. He is only hope, but doubt hits fast. He does not even know what most excellent sword means, or whether such thing exists at all. Josel steels himself and insists it must exist. His master normally uses swords forged by blacksmith Borvis, Country's top blacksmith, whose blades are usually impossible to surpass. Still, in city this large, Josel believes some unknown master craftsman may be hiding like gem in plain sight. Determined, Josel marches through streets beneath castle walls, searching for hidden master sword and maker behind it. Yet first weapons shop owner dismisses idea of sword better than Borvis work, saying there is no way such thing exists. Josel keeps moving from place to place, but answers remain same. One blacksmith admits forging sword better than Borvis is impossible for him, while smiling guild staff imagines how much weapon trade would thrive if master swords and master craftsmen appeared in large numbers. After searching every blacksmith in town, Josel finally breaks under failure. Slumped in room, he groans that he cannot find anything, then reasons that true master swords would never be found in obvious places. His mind wanders to Lord's mansion, where rarest weapons might sit in treasury, because both Gerhardt and Sir Ricardo have sharp eyes. But when he imagines Gerhardt ordering him to sneak into treasure vault, Josel panics, realizing he cannot casually mention that idea or his master may take it seriously. Before Josel can solve problem, young armored knight creeps into room and urgently calls him, ignoring protests about knocking first. He reports skirmish at knight's barracks. Josel reacts when he hears fight seems to be over sword, recently acquired by those men same corrupt long-haired knight and his group. Report sends Josel moving at once. He demands to know what kind of sword caused commotion, but young knight admits he has no details and begs him to come to barracks. Josel and Knight rush across castle grounds, only to find men already shouting over mysterious blade. In barracks yard, long-haired Knight stands with katana in hand, while others point at him and accuse him of keeping their jointly acquired sword for himself. Josel arrives as tension peaks, and long-haired Knight grips weapon tighter in silence. Josel's eyes catch katana's shape, slim and elegant, unlike any sword he has seen. He wonders if it is foreign. Long-haired Knight snaps that blade is his and no one else can touch it, while another knight angrily insists they got it together. Josel cuts through argument with disgust. He has heard about their false arrests and bail extortion, and points out that they likely obtained this weapon same way. Calling their actions no different from banditry, he declares he will confiscate Blade. Long-haired knight refuses. As he swings katana with wild force, eerie image of long-haired woman blooms from Blade, and Josel jolts in shock at sight no normal weapon should create. Vision intensifies. Ghost-like woman wraps around long-haired knight as he clutches katana and repeats he will not hand her over. Josel watches from distance, realizing woman appeared when sword was unsheathed and that this is far beyond simple greed. Long-haired knight's eyes grow feverish, and Josel wonders if woman is possessing him through sword. Blade Vision leans close, whispering that he belongs to her and she will always stay by his side, pulling him deeper under Katana's spell. Enchanted by her promise, long-haired knight answers like man lost in dream. With katana still drawn and spectral woman coiling around him, he accepts that she will always be with him, while danger in barracks grows sharper by second. Spellbound long-haired knight suddenly drags katana across his own face. Blood sprays as nearby knights recoil in horror, and his body wobbles while he collapses with unnatural smile still hanging on his lips. Men rush toward fallen knight, shouting that he cut himself and needs infirmary. Josel stares, shaken, because victim looked like he tried to rub his cheek against Blade, and fear settles in. He has never seen such mysterious sword. Josel brings katana to Gerhardt, who grips it with fascinated eyes. Gerhardt confirms this is katana Josel mentioned, and Josel explains knights resisted handing it over until he threatened to expose their illegal side job. Gerhardt draws Blade with bright obsession, amused by katana that makes people unconsciously press cheek to steel. Josel warns it may be cursed, but Gerhardt says he senses no magical power and wears mental resistance magic tool anyway, though Josel still begs him to be careful, ignoring warning. Gerhardt fully unsheaths katana with metallic clink. At first he praises its impressive shape, then pauses, gaze narrowing as blood-stained edge catches his attention. Gerhardt notices blade is stained with blood and condemns fools who fail to care for masterpieces. Josel apologizes for not checking cleaning, while Gerhardt says neglect like this invites rust and only creates needless sharpening work. Gerhardt kneels and begins wiping katana with slow, practiced strokes. Josel watches in uneasy silence as Master becomes absorbed, then shudders at incredible expression spreading across Gerhardt's face. Gerhardt works over blade as if entranced, and Josel realizes it does not feel like ordinary sword maintenance. Same aura as man who rubbed his cheek against steel rises again, until another illusion appears. Gerhardt seems to be caressing long-haired woman instead of sharpening katana. Katana gleams like living silver. Josel asks if Gerhardt is all right after his earlier excitement, and Gerhardt admits he barely remembers what happened. Yet outside castle walls, he says one thing became clear. Gerhardt raises katana high, face blazing with certainty, and declares, "This is love." Light bursts around Blade as Josel freezes beside him, unsure how to answer such sudden devotion. Gerhardt smirks at polished steel, calling love pleasure. Only craftsmen can taste, beyond king or pope. His laughter turns sharp as he feels close to completing greatest work of his life. Energy floods back into Gerhardt. He thanks Josel for bringing him together with katana and announces ritual beginning, while Josel, relieved yet shaken, thinks his master may truly craft masterpiece. Gerhardt places katana on stand and tells Josel to go home. Josel begs to assist, but Gerhardt refuses, saying he must spellforge katana alone because distraction might anger it. Josel can only leave with warning. Be careful. Alone in workshop, Gerhardt sets tools and circles katana with glowing force. Chapter title: Rises the Magic Sword's Awakening. Facing frightening blade, he admits no one knows what may happen. Magical power erupts with tremendous force, nearly swallowing Gerhardt. Woman-like presence streams from katana with a soft smile, and Gerhardt trembles between fear and delight, begging his dear blade to go easy on him. Gerhardt steadies himself with chisel in hand and speaks to katana like lover and patient. He explains tool cuts iron but should not harm it, then prepares to carve runes into blade and grant it new power. Gerhardt drives chisel into katana, sparks exploding with each brutal strike. Pain lashes through him, yet he grits teeth and pleads with blade to endure, forcing rune work forward despite backlash. Power whirls through workshop like storm. Gerhardt knows if guard drops, he will lose consciousness, and his mental resistance gear begins to crumble under pressure. Even then, fascination grows as he wonders what kind of swordsmith made unsigned katana. Katana resists with shrieking force, scattering fragments around room. Gerhardt insists he is not enemy, calling Rune's gift to Blade, then curses its stubbornness as clarity hits him. He now knows what spell will make it even more alluring. Night over Count Maximilian Xander's castle erupts in blinding flash. Gerhardt's chosen power bursts outward from workshop, announcing spell forging, reaching decisive moment. Few days later, castle returns to calm. Maids move through bright halls, and Ricardo enters after subjugating another monster, summoned once more by Count. Servants whisper around Ricardo in awe, amazed he faced Wyvern without even bruise. They wonder what sword Count will present this time, while Ricardo quietly expects reward to be another of Gerhardt's swords. Ricardo admits he is grateful as collector, always glad for new sword, but memory of last rewards still weighs on him. Blade was average, or rather merely decent, and he was frankly disappointed. Before Ricardo can speak, Josel appears with hollow, exhausted face. Alarmed voices call out to Sir Josel, asking what is wrong, and he weakly offers Ricardo bracelet, telling him to take it. Josel walks beside Ricardo through Castle Hall and explains reward. Another magic sword for monster subjugation. Ricardo accepts politely, but Josel hands him bracelet first, warning mental resistance tool may stop magic blade from possessing because Josel himself nearly died. Josel reveals Gerhardt placed charm spell on Katana, making it deceive not only opponents but wielder too, even turning blade against them. Ricardo can hardly believe high-ranking knight like Josel was affected. But Josel says that is exactly why demonic katana terrifies him, and asks Ricardo to refuse reward. Ricardo, smiling, says he cannot. Ricardo explains sword was made specially for him, and refusing would shame Count Maximilian Xander and Gerhardt. More than duty, his weapon lover's curiosity burns too brightly to reject such intriguing blade, so Josel only pats him and urges him to wear bracelet. Door creaks open with absurd drama. Ricardo tells himself he has slain countless monsters and will not be deceived by some demonic katana, while Josel watches in tense silence from behind, before gathered nobles. Count Maximilian Xander praises Ricardo as land's divine protector and true hero. Ricardo feels uneasy under such praise, but formal reward proceeds as Count commands Gerhardt to present his new sword. Gerhardt steps forward holding katana and smirks. Ricardo notices that look at once, sensing it as teasing, even provoking him, and wonders what both Josel and Gerhardt see in this sword that makes it so special. Ricardo accepts reward with courtesy, while reminding himself that magic or not, sword remains sword. He questions value of charm magic on battlefield, thinking it only activates after cutting enemy and may not even work against monsters. Count allows Ricardo to unsheath it. Expectations low, Ricardo prepares polite thanks, even if blade proves mediocre, then pulls katana free with sharp chack while Gerhardt watches closely, waiting for reaction. Katana bursts awake with sudden whoosh, and Ricardo freezes mid-draw. Sweet scent reaches him, bracelet grows hot on his wrist, and panic hits as his hands and then his whole body refuse to move. Woman-like vision blooms behind blade, smiling near Ricardo's shoulder as carved runes gleam on steel. His face goes pale with fear, trapped between katana in his hands and presence pressing against his mind. Blade flashes with a sharp swash, and Ricardo sees her clearly. Long-haired woman holding a sword identical to his. Shock turns to dread as he realizes she stands beside him like reflection given flesh. Spectral woman raises identical blade over him, and Ricardo's locked body cannot dodge. He wonders if she means to cut him, but not one muscle answers while danger drops toward his head. Slash lands in illusion with violent spray, and Ricardo screams. In reality, his own hands jerk katana across him with a harsh kachak, leaving him gasping and terrified before entire hall. Crowd erupts in whispers as Ricardo pants, sweat pouring down his face. Count Maximilian Xander asks what happened and whether reward displeased him, while Ricardo stands rigid with katana still drawn. Ricardo scrambles to save face, claiming he screamed because sword's craftsmanship moved him so deeply. Count offers another reward if he dislikes it, but Ricardo insists he means. He has never seen sword like this, even as Private Thought asks what thing he is truly holding. Gerhardt chuckles with smug satisfaction while Ricardo glares, shaken by old Spellforger's knowing smile. Count Maximilian Xander laughs, proud he entrusted reward to Gerhardt, and asks Ricardo to keep protecting land as castle stands bright beyond city roofs. Gerhardt drinks in high spirits, thrilled by how pale Ricardo turned when Katana awakened. Josel, still tense, admits he was on edge, hoping Ricardo would not lop off his own head. But Gerhardt only grins and calls that possibility a massive problem. Knocking hits door, and Gerhardt notes Mr. Hero has arrived. Ricardo bursts in with katana in hand, demanding to know what this sword is and whether it is cursed. While Gerhardt casually objects to him calling masterpiece a thing, Gerhardt insists there is no curse on blade. But Ricardo presses about woman who nearly cut him down. When Gerhardt realizes Ricardo saw Ghost Lady too, he laughs instead of apologizing, saying such exceptional beauty makes sword cultured rather than cursed. Gerhardt grows serious enough to explain. Katana is too beautiful, beautiful enough to disturb all who see it. Out of curiosity, he added charm spell and result became one heck of magic sword, though Ricardo shouts that such thing is not done out of curiosity. Gerhardt offers blunt trade if Ricardo cannot use it. Give it back, and he will craft average but decent sword instead. Ricardo hesitates, but Spellforger's quiet smile and words strike pride directly. Finest katana belongs with strongest warrior, greatest work entrusted to him. Ricardo snaps his hands around sword and refuses to let it go, declaring he will keep it. Gerhardt's gamble works, yet he apologizes for harsh words and tells Ricardo to master katana, because creating such masterpiece will bring new problems. Gerhardt then asks both Ricardo and Josel to come with him, saying he will request meeting with Count. Josel questions plans since Gerhardt just met Count, but old Spellforger only smirks, leaving his students sweating over what he is plotting. Before Count Maximilian Xander, Gerhardt calmly asks for time off from duty as personal Spellforger. Count is stunned and asks if treatment displeased him, but Gerhardt bows with gratitude, saying katana is his life's greatest work, and, as he is now, he cannot offer anything greater. Gerhardt bows before Count Maximilian Xander and says he wants to devote himself to training so he can make even better sword. Count turns question toward Ricardo, and Ricardo raises katana at once, declaring he also needs time to master it, because even another sword would leave him no time to wield it. Count Maximilian Xander sits back, moved that both swordsmith and swordsman value katana so highly. Since Gerhardt and Ricardo agree, he sees no reason to force Gerhardt to stay, and grants him leave. Count smiles and adds one condition. If Gerhardt produces fine work during training, he must show it. Gerhardt bows deeply in gratitude, while his thoughts race ahead to freedom from dreadful daily quotas and chance to bury himself in research. Released from duty, Gerhardt nearly trembles with joy, imagining reckless experiments with every spell he wants, as freelance spellforger. He starts to take leave, then jolts as Count calls him back, asking whether something is wrong. Count Maximilian Xander smiles too warmly and says katana looks quite nice, enough that he wants one too. Gerhardt breaks into alarm at once, because even if Count says it need not be as good, making cheap imitation for noble is impossible. Count tells him not to think too hard, insisting inferior version is fine, and says he cannot wait to see it. Gerhardt leaves in gloom, realizing Count wants katana despite how rare such foreign blade is, and wonders where he can even find swordsmith capable of forging one. Question hangs over Lutz's isolated forge outside city walls. Inside, Lutz quietly prepares food, thinking that since Claudia began living with him, amount he cooks has doubled and work has grown heavier, though he does not really mind. Door slams open as Claudia bursts in with bright energy, announcing she is home and has work for Lutz. She declares order from Knight's barracks, 5 daggers for 80 silver, while Lutz worries she will break front door and questions why she returned to same barracks where corrupt knights arrested him. At meal, Claudia tells Lutz not to overdo it, then shifts to story about his lost katana. Corrupt knights fought over it until high-ranking knight confiscated it, leaving Lutz startled. He wonders who holds blade now, but decides Claudia beside him matters more. Claudia beams over food, saying because Lutz gave up blade, she now has that smile all to herself. Outside forge, Lutz quietly lets regret fade, choosing to protect Claudia and life they have together. Elsewhere, Gerhardt searches city for anyone who can make katana, but weapon shops only answer with blank stares and ignorance. When Josel reminds him Claudia originally brought katana to him, Gerhardt admits he has no lead, while Claudia, hearing rumors, vows to find blacksmith even if last thing she does. Back at forge, Lutz lays 5 finished daggers on table for Claudia. She checks order from Knight's barracks 5 daggers. For 80 silver then stares at blades and snaps that he cannot be serious, because he thinks price means 80 silver each. Claudia explodes, declaring these 5 fine blades could sell for 5 gold, not 80 silver. Lutz can only accept deal is already done, while Claudia fumes that selling high-quality goods properly is whole point of business. Lutz tries to explain his thinking. Blacksmith skill also shows in balancing speed, quality, and cost, and losing money worries him less than time and effort. Still, with Claudia clutching blades in frustration, He admits he could not afford to cut corners this time. On way to deliver wares, Claudia wonders why Lutz came along when she can sell alone. Lutz says negotiations go easier with man carrying katana beside her, but his true fear is clear. Customers are same bastards who arrested women on false charges, and he will not let Claudia face them alone. Claudia teases him for being surprisingly overprotective, and Lutz warns her not to talk where anyone might hear. Memories of those thugs still cling to barracks, so Claudia smirks, agrees to sell fast, and they head inside together. Claudia strides into Barrack's tavern like stage performer, Lutz standing guard at her side with katana. She announces delivery and sweeps blades onto table, pulling drunk soldiers away from booze and cards as curiosity snaps through room. Daggers slide free with bright glint, and soldiers crowd closer in surprise. They marvel at shine and sharpness, one calling it sharper than his longsword, while Claudia and Lutz smile from side as simple sales pitch catches fire. Praise turns into eager chatter, and Claudia says good feedback is only natural for blades made this well. Buyer hurries to fetch 80 silver, but before deal can close, one long-haired soldier at table stops everything with quiet, dangerous hold on. Long-haired soldier lifts dagger and sneers that 80 silver is joke, claiming he would pay 60 at most. He calls blade too plain, mocking unornamented handle and sheath. But Claudia keeps business smile and asks if he wants price lowered. Soldier slams fist down and barks that people would mock him for wielding something so poor-looking. Claudia exhales and begins to explain true value, but Lutz's gloved hand cuts in, stopping her before she swallows insult for sake of sale. Lutz draws line hard, slamming katana down and declaring they will not do business with him. Soldier snaps that customer should be heard, but Lutz fires back that man agreed to 80 silver first and has no honor if he breaks deal now. Lutz's anger shakes room as he says daggers are worth 5 gold coins, not 80 silver, because he put real effort into forging them. He refuses to sell to someone with rotten eyes and character, someone who cannot see true worth yet demands discount. Long-haired soldier reaches for weapon, arguing blacksmith should add flair as common sense. Lutz grabs katana ready, shielding Claudia behind him, and cuts through excuse coldly. Common sense is not word idiots should use to justify nonsense. Rumblings fill barracks as Lutz grips katana and measures hostile room. He knows he once used one well enough to beat loser like long-haired soldier. But if he draws now, every ruffian may jump in outnumbered. With Claudia to protect, he cannot win by force. Instead of cutting anyone down, Lutz sways back with awkward smile and blurts, "Thanks for purchase." Tension breaks at once. Coins clatter across table, and soldiers laugh as they pay exactly 80 silver, while Lutz sweats through relief. Other knights stare at daggers and ask if one blade is really worth 5 gold, while another offers to buy haggler's share. Claudia grabs Lutz proudly, explaining he got carried away on first big job in a while. But long-haired soldier erupts, yelling that negotiations were still going. Other customers ignore long-haired soldier coldly, saying he wasted his own time and nearly ruined deal for everyone. Claudia flashes peace sign beside Lutz and claims she was protecting everyone's interests, while outside later, heavy bag drops with thud as she celebrates huge success. Back at Forge, Claudia dumps mountain of coins across table and announces all daggers sold despite tense moment. She cheers that another knight bought remaining blade from stubborn man, while Lutz notes selling out means they no longer have one for self-defense. Then she leans close and calls his name. Claudia points straight at Lutz and demands, if he gives her blade, it must be one made specially for her. Dreaming aloud, she says handmade gifts sway women's hearts, and suggests he craft masterpiece for woman he loves, leaving Lutz blushing and asking if she is not embarrassed. Claudia closes distance until Lutz freezes, teasing that he has fallen in love with her. Then she taps coins on table and turns question sharp. Why did he make those daggers worth more than promised? Claudia climbs into Lutz's lap and guesses answer herself. Because customers were ruffians, he feared poor work might get her in trouble again. Lutz blushes and dodges with who knows, but Claudia holds his collar. Certain extra effort came from worry for her. Night settles outside Forge, while Claudia stays close in Lutz's lap, and finally bears fear she hid behind smiles. In dungeon, she says she felt helpless, shaking in dark cell while waiting for beasts to violate her, and Lutz can only stare, sweating as weight of those words sinks in. Lutz apologizes, saying he never knew because Claudia always acted so cheerful. Claudia touches his face and answers with full force of heart. She has always seen him specially. She loves him. And when he came to rescue her that day, those feelings exploded. Her confession keeps pouring out. As Lutz whispers her name, stunned red, Claudia says that ever since he gave up that katana for her, she has wondered what she could possibly give back. But when Lutz says her help is already enough, she snaps that he is impossibly dense. Claudia grips his collar, leans in until he cannot escape, and spells answer out herself. She wants to give him everything. Lutz freezes under her gaze, but Claudia smiles with soft confidence, waiting for him to understand. At last Lutz moves, lifting Claudia into his arms with sudden strength. He admits he always thought she was beautiful, but now finds her cute too. And under moonlit roof, he says he wants to embrace her right now. Day breaks over Castle City, and mood crashes back to absurd trouble. Gerhardt begs Josel not to be cruel, insisting he cannot begin training unless he gets a katana, while Josel rejects demand as impossible. Gerhardt explains he searched every weapon shop in town and found nothing, so now he can only rely on Josel, who first brought him that bewitching blade. Josel protests that he only got it by chance, then admits he does own one, and when Gerhardt yells to present it to Count, Josel instead tosses out a katana for inspection. Josel holds blade up, sweating as he judges it. It is certainly katana-shaped, but compared to Lutz's other blade, it feels like toy, or Gerhardt says he bought it from peddler long ago, proving even collectors rarely find high-quality katana in this land. And Josel stiffens at impossible task before him. Gerhardt's smile turns sharp as he remembers. He still has not thanked Josel for bringing him that bewitching katana. Josel tries to refuse, but Gerhardt flings heavy pouch onto table and offers 20 gold coins, telling him to take it. Josel panics at sum, shouting that 20 gold is more than year's wages and far too much to accept. Yet his hands clamp around pouch while Gerhardt dryly points out his words and actions do not match, then reminds him his wife is pregnant with second child. Gerhardt sweetens trap with ruthless precision. Find swordsmith who forged katana for extra 10 gold. Build friendly relationship for another 20. Josel stiffens as Gerhardt presses harder, saying money could let second child enter noble family, even buy Josel his own noble line. Josel imagines pregnant wife and young son, realizing money could lift family far beyond humble knight status. Resolve wins over shame, and he heads for barracks, thinking place where katana first appeared may still hold clue, even if he already regrets rash deal. Doubt gnaws at Josel as barracks come into view. Asking those bird brains feels pointless. Inside, soldiers with rooster heads and blank stares prove his insult almost literal. But for family's sake, he forces himself forward, then freezes at sight before him. Two men sit with Lutz's daggers, blades glinting in their hands. When Josel demands what those are, they panic, insisting daggers were acquired legally and not stolen from him. But Josel sees enough at once short or not. These are real katana-like blades, terrifying compared to cheap toy he inspected. Josel's mind ignites. These daggers are not as overwhelming as that other katana, yet beautiful enough to bewitch people. If Maker can forge peace for him, mission may be saved. So he shoves blade towards startled man and demands where it came from. Frightened soldier explains woman they once caught, came back to sell finished pieces, and brought young man with her, likely blacksmith in his 20s. Josel's face darkens into smirk, against all expectation. Trail to swordsmith lies right in front of him, and gold for wife and child suddenly feels within reach. Josel grabs frightened soldier by face and demands names, home, anything about pair who sold daggers. Soldier knows nothing about young man, only that woman's name began with Kla, and Josel's glare turns monstrous until memory finally coughs up uncertain answer. Back in Gerhardt's room, Josel reports name as Clarissa, claiming it belongs to female merchant. He laughs that he searched every shop in town using that lead, failed to find her, but now thinks success is only matter of time. Gerhardt, unimpressed, asks if he is sure name is right. Gerhardt cuts through Josel's confidence, noting Clarissa is unusual here, and those knights' memories cannot be trusted, especially after being threatened by superior. Josel starts to charge back for harsher questioning, but Gerhardt stops him, saying he has already gone far enough. Gerhardt takes over investigation himself and points beyond castle walls. Josel balks, insisting only ruffians live outside Castletown, and no proper swordsmith could be there. But Gerhardt narrows question to one clue. Blacksmith is young man. Gerhardt explains guild custom leaves young blacksmiths trapped as assistants for years, with few jobs trusted to man in 20s, yet this unknown smith freely forges pieces, making it reasonable he is not guild member and works outside walls, while Josel protests outside workshops are little more than scattered tools. Josel's prejudice earns cold correction. Gerhardt says far more people live outside walls than within, and narrow eyes may miss real talent. When Josel begs to accompany him as guard, Gerhardt shuts him down, warning his disdain would offend Master Blacksmith. Josel shudders under Gerhardt's stare and apologizes, realizing his worry was needless. Gerhardt says he needs no guard, gives Josel promised gold in advance, and tells him to rest and devote himself to family, leaving Josel bowing in gratitude. Gerhardt rides out through Castle Gate alone, first step outside walls in long while. Weapons shops would be obvious places to search, but beyond familiar streets stretch countless hidden corners, and his hunt for Katana's maker truly begins. Gerhardt follows every possible rumor, speaking with peddlers for leads, and asking around taverns. Yet after long searching, he rests outside with Horse nearby, admitting finding real clue has been far from simple. Horse hooves clop along unfamiliar road, as Gerhardt pushes farther from city. He decides he must broaden perspective, remembering blacksmiths need whetstones and tools. Then spots village ahead and wonders if locals may know something. A village child tells Gerhardt this is Lumberjack Village. That single fact snaps his attention. Sharper lumberjacks need axes maintained, so maybe blacksmith truly lives nearby. Yet women washing clothes say they have no idea who Clarissa is. Gerhardt droops, thinking nothing goes as planned, until one woman catches hidden clue. Young man working with female merchant may mean Claudia, not Clarissa. Another woman confirms Claudia is dating blacksmith, and Gerhardt realizes mistaken name nearly cost him answer. Village gossip floods in. Women say their husbands bought axes from Claudia's boyfriend and love them. Then explain Claudia visits often and mention delivery and sharpening work today. Gerhardt turns at once, hope blazing back. Gerhardt races down trail with almost childish excitement, following hint before it fades. In forest clearing, he finds black-haired young man calmly sharpening axe, steel whispering against stone in steady rhythm. Gerhardt studies him from distance, unsure if this young smith can truly be target. Then expert rhythm answers for him. Firm hands, no hesitation, polished control only master could make. And suspicion hardens into belief, before Gerhardt can prove more. Claudia appears carrying strange long blade, and lumberjacks tease her about gift from boyfriend. She proudly declares Lutz no mere blade sharpener but first-class blacksmith, then draws blade to show them proof. Claudia flashes the Ikuchi with a bright catching, proudly explaining it is no common dagger, but a blade sharp enough to pierce an enemy's heart. Watching closely, Gerhardt feels the radiance of the steel, and realizes it was clearly forged by the same swordsmith who made that bewitching katana. Gerhardt stares past Claudia toward Lutz, who keeps sharpening the axe with calm focus. The truth lands hard. This black-haired young man may be the swordsmith behind the katana, but Gerhardt restrains himself before rushing in. The Ikuchi convinces Gerhardt, yet doubt still remains. Lutz might be the real maker, or he might be an imposter who obtained those blades by chance, so Gerhardt decides he must confirm the truth with his own eyes. Gerhardt steps forward and addresses Claudia by name as Merchant, making her turn in surprise. When she asks who he is, he introduces himself as Gerhardt, personal spellforger of Count Xander's family, and the nearby men stiffen at noble connection. The villagers panic, asking why noble man would come to place like this. Gerhardt explains that strange sword was brought to Knight's barracks recently. But Claudia immediately cuts to the point and asks if he means katana, while he corrects that it is not technically a sword. Gerhardt's eyes sharpen when he realizes Claudia knows about that bewitching blade. He says katana was presented to Count, though later rewarded to someone else, then admits he was fascinated by it, and asks if she has skilled swordsmith working for her. Claudia calls out to Lutz, saying nobleman has come to see him. Lutz refuses to drop current work, insisting ordered axe has priority, so Gerhardt waits patiently beneath tree, while Claudia mutters that Lutz is probably nervous because visitor is noble. Once work allows, Lutz approaches, wipes sweat from his face, and introduces himself as swordsmith. Gerhardt greets him with request for katana, but grips his hand and asks, first whether katana given to knights was truly Lutz's own work, making Lutz's eyes widen. Lutz admits katana is his work and tries to let matter end there. Gerhardt's eyes narrow instead, and he asks to see blade Lutz carries, making Lutz jerk in alarm. Lutz understands Gerhardt wants proof he forged that katana. He draws his own weapon with uneasy honesty, saying he can show it, but it is poorly crafted, and he would not mind if it broke or got destroyed. Gerhardt grows suspicious at once. If Lutz sells fine blades, why would swordsmith carry inferior katana for himself? Lutz sweats under that stare. Realizing Gerhardt may think he is reseller pretending to be maker, Claudia cuts in with perfect timing, thrusting her Ikuchi toward Gerhardt and declaring it fine work by swordsmith Lutz. Gerhardt flinches as she keeps pushing it forward, though he already admits he saw how wonderful that blade is. Claudia praises Ikuchi as peak of functional beauty, weapon made only to kill with quick deft thrust, yet she insists there is also something gentle about it, because Lutz poured all his love for her into it. Gerhardt sees his clean way to verify truth. He asks to see Tang, where swordsmith name should be engraved, and Claudia happily offers blade until Lutz suddenly lunges in, shouting for everyone to wait. Lutz panics, claiming there is nothing interesting there, and it is better not to look. Claudia instantly catches problem, asking if he forgot to sign this one too, but Lutz insists there is inscription inside, only not one he wants shown. Gerhardt ignores panic and starts removing handle pin by hand, saying he knows how without hammer. Lutz's reaction only worsens suspicion, and when hidden engraving begins to show, Gerhardt realizes someone else's name may be carved there. Gerhardt yanks Ikuchi free, ready to expose an imposter, while Claudia and Lutz recoil in panic. But as hidden Tang comes into view, his fury breaks into shock whatever he expected. Engraving on blade is not it. Polished Tang flashes with embarrassing truth. For you, my beloved. Gerhardt reads it aloud in pieces. Claudia turns red, and Lutz hides his face as she bursts out asking what he engraved on her blade. Claudia snatches blade back, flustered and thrilled, scolding Lutz not to show it off while declaring he loves her far too much. Gerhardt quietly laughs, because love letter hidden in Tang proves only true maker would carve such words into weapon meant for woman. Misunderstanding cleared, Gerhardt apologizes for doubting Lutz and admits Ikuchi must be his work. When he asks to discuss request, Lutz still refuses to abandon sharpening jobs and asks him to visit workshop later, earning approval from both Claudia and Gerhardt. Later at Lutz's forge, T sits between Gerhardt, Lutz, and Claudia. Since visit concerns work, Claudia first asks about katana. Lutz lost to knights whose hands it finally reached, and Gerhardt decides craftsman deserves answer. Gerhardt reveals current owner is Ricardo, country's greatest hero and no half-baked wielder. Lutz and Claudia stare as image of armored, long-haired hero rises in their minds, making Lutz repeat title with stunned awe. Lutz relaxes, saying he feels blessed that such strong man uses his work. But Gerhardt warns relief is too early. He spellforged katana with charm spell, turning already amazing blade into extraordinary magic weapon that now feels powerful enough to curse every human around it to death. Lutz goes pale, wondering if he forged something truly terrible and if even hero can handle it. Gerhardt waves fear aside, insisting all they must do is make more blades, while Lutz imagines Ricardo impaling himself with cursed katana and panics harder. Gerhardt explains why Count Maximilian Xander came to want katana, then turns request straight to Lutz, asked if he can make one. Lutz lights up a chance beyond anything he hoped for, while Claudia smiles beside him, and Gerhardt demands superlative peace. Lutz scratches his head, grateful as struggling craftsman, and Gerhardt praises response. Then Gerhardt adds he will spellforge katana once ready, asking permission to engrave ancient runes, and Lutz calmly accepts, saying blades are meant for swordsmen in end. Lutz explains his craft with practical examples. If katana is too long, he will shorten Tang, because ease of use can decide life or death. Magic blade is not his goal, but altering each blade to fit customers' needs feels right to him, and Gerhardt approves that as true craftsman thinking. Claudia brings talk back to Count's request, asking what kind of blade Count wants. Gerhardt admits Count is terrible with sword and probably will never use it, so Lutz dryly concludes it should not be too heavy and only needs to look nice. Claudia stops Lutz at once, warning that sword-loving noble like Count likely meets other sword lovers. If he shows off impractical katana, he will embarrass himself, and Gerhardt agrees that practicality still matters, even if Count never uses it. Lutz sinks deep into thought, muttering about katana that is light, good-looking, and highly practical while weighing options in his head. Gerhardt asks if he can do it, but Lutz is already lost in his own world until he suddenly slams table and jolts Gerhardt upright. Decision hits. Lutz declares he will do it, asks for 2 weeks, and promises to make it work somehow. Outside Forge, Gerhardt prepares to leave with Horse, saying he will return in 2 weeks and looks forward to result, while Lutz answers quietly. Before leaving, Lutz notices Gerhardt's impressive sword calluses and asks if he is skilled with sword himself. Gerhardt brushes it off as old story. Then under evening sky says there is no need for another bewitching piece, while Lutz laughs that he could not make Katana like first one on purpose, even if he tried. After Gerhardt leaves, silence hangs inside Forge. Claudia notices Lutz sitting dazed by furnace and asks what is wrong, guessing noble job has overwhelmed him. Lutz clenches fist and admits he is nervous, maybe scared. Forging katana for noble customer could change his life, but Claudia laughs at fear and says his real turning point was hurling that bewitching blade at knights and winning her over. Claudia points at him with bright confidence, saying everything else is trivial compared to that. She tells him to stop moping and work, while teasing that he truly trusts her love for him when she offers proof. Lutz blushes and refuses. Claudia calls hidden inscription on Ikuchi romantic in its own way, but much more useful as lifelong teasing material. She leans close with wicked smile, then decides to leave him locked in Forge so he can focus, telling him to rest only when he must. From doorway, Claudia winks and offers comfort if his head feels ready to burst, but Lutz snaps for her to sleep. Alone again, he repeats her words and finds strength in her cheerful resolve, deciding to follow her example. Fire roars back to life. Lutz studies Count's needs. Noble likely needs only survive first blow before guards take over. Yet blade must still be strong, practical, beautiful, and ornate. With plan taking shape, he throws himself into forging. Hammer crashes down again and again, sparks scattering across Forge as Lutz drives all his might into steel. Focus hardens on his face, while new katana begins to take form under every ringing strike. 2 weeks later, Gerhardt returns to Lutz's isolated forge and knocks as promised. Claudia welcomes him, and Gerhardt asks if katana is finished. Lutz answers that he will show it outside. Sure, Gerhardt will want to take a swing or two. Outside Forge, Gerhardt draws finished katana and freezes. Blade flashes in daylight with sharp curve and clean shine, making old Spellforger gasp that it is gorgeous while Lutz and Claudia watch from behind. Gerhardt asks to swing it, and Lutz allows him. One breath later, Gerhardt raises blade overhead, then cuts down with firm stance, testing weight and balance in his own hands. Shock hits Gerhardt mid-swing. Katana moves too smoothly, so easily he can barely believe it, and wind roars around blade while Lutz and Claudia look on from near Forge. Gerhardt launches into faster cuts, cloak whipping as blade carves clean arcs through air. Every swing makes wind cry, and he praises katana as wonderful, until Lutz's grim silence catches his attention. Gerhardt snaps, asking what is wrong, and warning Lutz not to say he is unsatisfied with such first-class work. Lutz scratches his head awkwardly, admitting he is happy with result. But blade is not finished yet because it still has no signature. Gerhardt explodes at once, shouting that unsigned katana caused trouble before. Lutz admits he dislikes coming up with names, but Gerhardt demands he choose one immediately so katana can be taken home. Lutz tries serious answer and proposes Count's sword because katana is for Count. Gerhardt nearly cracks from shock, but Claudia slashes in to stop him, insisting naming cannot be left to Lutz because he has no aesthetic sense at all. Claudia points out Lutz treats blades like pure tools. Simple hilt, plain round guard, deep black sheath, all function and no decoration. She suggests Gerhardt name it as co-creator, and he considers Wind's Weep, though Claudia doubts that direction too. Claudia rejects Gerhardt's wind idea and aims bigger, proposing name worthy of something even demons would fear. Demon's Wail. Lutz stands caught between them, helpless before her dramatic naming sense. Gerhardt accepts name with satisfaction, hands over payment for Demon's Wail, and rides off with katana raised high. He says Count will pay extra if he likes it, though Gerhardt has no doubt he will. Back inside Forge, heavy coin pouch lands on table. Claudia says request felt like dream, and Lutz agrees life can take strange turns until Claudia's curiosity wins, and she rushes to see how much they earned. Claudia opens pouch and coins spill everywhere with bright clatter. Lutz panics, fearing fake money for instant, but glittering pile proves otherwise. Shock deepens when Lutz realizes payment is not silver but gold. Claudia confirms. Coins are real and counts 100 of them, while memory of Gerhardt praising Demon's Wail as masterpiece suddenly feels painfully accurate. Lutz and Claudia cling to each other in disbelief, wondering if they are dreaming and whether bakery could even make change for one coin. Gold reigns across table, and Claudia laughs that lost katana has returned to them in roundabout form. Chapter shifts to castle, where Gerhardt has left Lutz's katana with ornamentalist Patrick before final delivery. But Patrick clutches newly decorated blade and begs Gerhardt to sell it to him, offering as much gold as he wants. Close detail reveals Patrick's work. Fierce beast-shaped sheath, shining guard, and lavish polish around first-rate blade. Patrick is drunk on his own craftsmanship and refuses to let go, while Gerhardt stares in stunned silence. Patrick still clutches katana like treasure, offering 20 or 30 gold, but Gerhardt shuts him down. This is gift for Count, not something Patrick can buy. Yet Patrick trembles because ornamentation is best work of his life. Gerhardt understands pain of letting great craft go, but refuses to indulge him. He reminds Patrick katana's weight cannot compare to his place as provider for Count's family, then reaches out and demands he stop being unreasonable. Gerhardt finally takes decorated katana away and declares Patrick responsible for ornamenting it before Count. Patrick thanks him in misery, while Gerhardt insists sword is not wall art and would be wasted on Count if judged by fighting skill alone. At Castle, Count Maximilian Xander strolls through grand arches with armored attendants, admitting he has no urgent duties and may relax after noon. When black-haired knight suggests sword training, Count stiffens, asking if he means training. Count tries to escape with weak smile, claiming he feels unwell today. But black-haired knight charges forward, saying lack of exercise causes all malaise. Count flees toward his room, leaving two armored men to quietly agree he hates practice as usual. Elsewhere in Castle, Gerhardt studies demons wail with two swords laid across stand. Blonde knight worries fine blade may become mere ornament, but Gerhardt says Count's weak body cannot be helped and opens his tools with perfect confidence. Gerhardt reveals answer. Wind magic, I says, spell will sharpen blade while reducing weight, making demons wail easy even for frail Count. And ritual circle waits around katana as runic anchors drop into place. Light bursts from ritual as Gerhardt engraves power into steel, hammering while magic pulses around blade. Blonde knight asks to watch, and Gerhardt permits it, assuring him this katana will not curse anyone. Gerhardt throws himself into spellforging with fierce resolve, telling Josel to watch closely because he will give it everything he has. Josel swallows hard as demons wail shines beneath Gerhardt's tools, blade catching magic with dangerous brilliance. Gerhardt's face tightens with sweat and focus while he keeps working without pause. Beside him, Josel stands tense, both men facing glow of ritual as steady metallic knocks mark each strike. 3 hours later, Josel stares in awe at finished blade. Demon's wail gleams with magical power, and Josel praises Gerhardt's splendid work, while exhausted old spellforger wobbles on his feet, laughing weakly through his breath. Josel grabs Gerhardt before he can collapse, scolding him for engraving 3 hours straight. Gerhardt admits Demon's wail refused to let him rest, then marvels that katana survived power of 5 ancient runes, when most swords break after only 2 or 3. Confidence returns to Gerhardt as he asks how blade fares when swung, and decides they should test it in courtyard. Outside castle arches, he stands with Demon's wail ready. Then his eyes sharpen and first swing tears through air with violent wind. Gerhardt laughs that blade cuts as if slicing wind itself, then offers Josel chance to try, since Count has not received it yet. Josel accepts, and as he raises katana, first practice swing whooshes through courtyard, while Gerhardt watches with amused calm. Josel swings again and again, but his cuts only make ordinary whooshing sounds, nothing like Gerhardt's. Frustrated, he asks why, and Gerhardt smirks that sound depends on how sword cuts Winden. Bluntly says Josel lacks skill and should give up. Josel begs for more swings until he can make same sound, but Gerhardt refuses because Demon's wail is gift for Count and must not be dirtied with sweat. He warns swordsmen can become obsessed and unable to stop, but Josel rejects thought of abandoning wife and children, declaring he lives for lord and family. Gerhardt walks castle corridor with Demon's wail. Sure, Count will be pleased, but Josel's gloom gives him pause. When Josel admits he wants their very own katana someday, Gerhardt says Lutz may craft one for them, though he refuses to cast magic on it. Gerhardt's refusal turns into challenge. With sharp smirk, he tells Josel to do spellforging himself after finishing training and becoming full-fledged spellforger, because apprentice should at least enchant his own blades. At last, Demon's wail reaches Count Maximilian Xander. Gerhardt presents ornate katana with pride. Josel stands smiling behind him, and Count draws blade with nervous wonder before formal handoff in Castle Hall. Demon's wail earns place among Count's treasured swords, its beast-carved sheath shining beside other blades on grand display. Count smiles broadly, praising work, while Gerhardt and Josel watch his reaction in tense silence. Back in workshop, Gerhardt crumbles. Surrounded by scattered swords, he clutches his head and admits he cannot work, because after handling superior blade, ordinary swords no longer excite him. Gerhardt tosses another blade aside and faces ugly truth. Despite scolding Patrick and Josel for getting attached to Demon's Whale, he has not gotten over Katana himself. Still, memory of Count's pleased face tells him delivery succeeded. At Noble Gathering, Count wears Demon's Whale proudly and receives admiration for fine sword. But when asked whether he has used it in combat, Count laughs that nobles do not fight, then admits beautiful weapon, belongs on wall and worse. Rust has already touched it after being left unattended. Gerhardt's mind snaps at imagined neglect, screaming that he would never forgive such foolishness. He jolts from delusion, then storms from room for fresh air, forcing himself to forget Demon's Whale and look toward new project instead. Trying to move on, Gerhardt walks castle corridor and thinks through ideal request. Slender, easy to wield, graceful yet practical, powerful even in sheath. Then realization strikes. What he wants is another blade like Demon's Wyland. His mood sinks into silence. A strange swoon echoes through Stone Hall. Gerhardt turns sharply, then follows sound toward courtyard, wondering what could be making that wind-cutting noise. In courtyard, Gerhardt finds Count Maximilian Xander, swinging Demon's Whale with surprising force. Count notices Gerhardt's stunned face and laughs, explaining he is practicing because he felt like it, while Gerhardt can only stare and call him my lord. Count beams as he thanks Gerhardt for crafting truly fine katana. Then, still sweating, he asks whether he can proudly call himself its owner and display it without ever using it. And Gerhardt answers with hard truth. Katana is not ornament. Gerhardt's lecture turns oddly blunt, comparing unused blade to bragging about wife's beauty without ever sharing passion with her. He apologizes for vulgar wording, but Count laughs it off and understands. Blade is meant to be swung. Count keeps practicing, admitting he wants to learn more about katana. Gerhardt says, owner must be able to describe how it feels to wield, and Count shyly explains poor swings sound pathetic, while good swings feel like katana itself is praising him. Gerhardt sees value in that mindset, realizing sound can guide Count's learning as well as any method. Then Count makes another sweeping cut, wind roaring across courtyard, and Gerhardt's surprise gives way to approval. Count eagerly asks how he did and begs for advice, wanting to try many things. Gerhardt suggests gripping handle firmly with both hands, but soon Count's breath grows ragged, while Gerhardt watches in stern silence. Gerhardt watches Count Maximilian Xander struggle for breath and realizes excellent blade can change person's attitude. He thinks Lutz has truly crafted fine katana. All his fears that Count might never wield demons Whale have been cut away by Count himself, until Count suddenly coughs hard. Count nearly collapses in courtyard, still clutching Demon's Whale, and Gerhardt rushes to stop him, declaring training enough for today. Count insists he can go on, wanting Demon's Whale to recognize him, but Gerhardt firmly says no. Great swordsmen cannot be made in day, and Count must first build stronger body. Gerhardt supports exhausted Count and quietly decides Demon's Whale is lucky to have landed in better hands than expected. Then thought turns to man, who received similar katana, wondering how heroic Ricardo is doing with that bewitching blade. Far away in forest, Ricardo faces charging orcs with broken sword in hand. Massive tusked orc crashes through brush with axe raised, while smaller orcs swarm behind it, and Ricardo braces himself against tree with blood and dirt across his face. Ricardo lunges forward with broken blade, shouting not to underestimate him, but massive orc's axe answers with brutal force. Steel flashes, wind screams, and orc mocks him for giving up already, as broken sword is knocked aside. Ricardo is hurled into tree with crushing thwack, his weapon breaking apart as orcs close in. The giant orc laughs that swordsman is finished once sword breaks, while Ricardo, bloodied and stunned, realizes this monster is twice size of others and far too strong to beat barehanded. The giant orc points at Ricardo and demands another sword, promising to break that one too. Ricardo glares back, remembering he has never used katana in real combat and fearing it may cut its own wielder the instant it is drawn. With death closing in, Ricardo grips katana at his waist. He knows it is do or die. Draw blade or be killed by orcs, even if bewitching weapon might be danger all by itself. Ricardo draws katana, and forest air explodes with power. Giant orc freezes, sweating as blade shines before him, demanding to know what kind of sword this is. Dark wind coils around Ricardo, and long-haired, blood-stained woman-like presence appears behind him. She smirks close to his shoulder, while Ricardo trembles, recognizing her arrival with dread. The blood-stained woman whispers strange words into Ricardo's ear. Ricardo panics, warning himself not to answer, or she will curse him to death. But orcs stare at same figure and mutter that sword looks even more beautiful than expected. Ricardo realizes with horror that monsters can see her too, and wonders if Katana's curse fails against them. Giant Orc steps forward, saying it would be shame to break such blade, then decides to kill Ricardo and make woman his own, before Ricardo can react. Giant Orc suddenly slashes his own throat. Blood erupts, lesser orcs stare in shock, and Giant Orc collapses while drooling in grotesque delight. Ricardo stands stunned as body crashes down. He understands Giant Orc cut himself while smiling, and even orc minions panic, asking if boss went mad because of that sword. Fear spreads faster than blood. Orcs flee, screaming that Ricardo is bad news, while he watches them scatter and confirms. Katana's power is real, until Blade's curve catches his eye and leaves him questioning what is wrong with it. Back at Castle, report reaches Count Maximilian Xander. Giant Orc variant appeared during extermination request. Bearded Elder explains request never mentioned such foe, and if requester knew about powerful enemy, he may have hidden information. Count Maximilian Xander takes Ricardo's report with rare gravity, apologizing that citizen plotted against him and vowing it must never happen again. Ricardo watches him uneasily, sensing unusual lordly dignity, until Count asks how he defeated Giant Orcan. Ricardo wonders if strange blade at his side caused everything. Ricardo explains he was cornered and forced to rely on bewitching katana, which unleashed magic Gerhardt had cast on it. In his account, Giant Orc was instantly charmed and slit its own throat, leaving Count shocked that fight ended without Ricardo even swinging blade. Ricardo insists, power is not mere magic but curse. He describes Orc smiling as it killed itself, then adds embarrassing detail that freezes Hall in silence. Giant Orc also had massive erection, making even Gerhardt and armored knight stare in stunned disbelief. Ricardo grips sheathed katana with shaking hands and admits terror. Drawn blade charms humans and monsters alike, affects enemies and allies, and can even endanger its own wielder until Gerhardt snaps, jolting him with furious shout for calling life-saving katana evil. Gerhardt storms forward, lecturing Ricardo that no matter circumstances, katana saved his life, so calling it evil or terrifying is rude. Ricardo recoils, baffled by old Spellforger's anger, while Count calmly agrees from throne that gratitude should come first. Count rests hand on Demon's Wail and says, blades are essential for survival, so swordsman must be grateful to his sword. Ricardo awkwardly calls katana tool, but Gerhardt erupts again, declaring weapon shaped by craftsmen's souls and trusted with warriors' lives cannot be dismissed as mere tool. Silence crushes Hall after Gerhardt's outburst. Ricardo stands sweating with katana in hand, wondering if he is strange one. While Count smiles and notes, Ricardo shows no affection for his katana. Count suggests problem may be nameless blade, saying, naming katana could help Ricardo appreciate it. He immediately orders Gerhardt to write introduction letter, so Ricardo can visit swordsmith who crafted it. While Gerhardt insists, sword is swordsman's soul and good name will make it shine brighter. Before Ricardo leaves, Gerhardt gives one fierce warning. This time he must not ask Lutz to name katana. He must ask Claudia instead. Ricardo walks toward Forge, baffled by how everyone treats swords like people, vowing he will never become that crazy. Ricardo reaches Lutz's workshop and knocks, still muttering that collecting swords is fine, but treating them like humans crosses line. Claudia opens door, radiant and curious, and Ricardo instantly freezes before asking if this is Mr. Lutz's workshop and whether he made katana. Claudia's eyes sharpen as she notices Blade. She bursts into Forge, shouting for Lutz, declaring bewitching Blade has come home, and its heroic owner is here. Lutz looks up from table, surprised, while Ricardo studies young swordsmith and realizes he is far younger than expected. Inside workshop, katana rests on table between them. Ricardo explains he wants names so he can feel more attached to it. Claudia understands at once, then cheerfully sums up trauma. Watching Orc commit suicide while having orgasm sounds shocking, and Ricardo grimly confirms it was most repulsive Orc death he has ever seen. Lutz smiles at Frey's terrifying katana, taking it as praise and saying he is flattered. Ricardo snaps that he was not praising him, then grows more frustrated as Claudia asks about terrifying illusions, and Lutz urges him to tell more. Ricardo describes drawing katana, sweet scent-filled air. Then woman draped in blood appeared behind him. He admits if he had lowered guard, she surely would have cursed him to death. Lutz reacts with sudden realization, while Claudia notes Ricardo saw her too. Lutz starts to propose name, but Claudia rejects it before he can finish. Certain nothing decent can follow woman draped in blood. Ricardo watches their exchange, uneasy, as Claudia presses logic instead. Illusion is sweet-smelling woman, meaning katana is a girl. Ricardo recoils at idea blades could have gender, but Claudia happily treats katana like person and suggests camellia, name of flower perfect for girl. Ricardo repeats name in surprise, admitting it feels almost too elegant to give to blade. Ricardo accepts camellia, and Lutz explains why name fits. Camellias drop petals all at once, matching bewitching blade's graceful yet lethal beauty. Deciding matter settled, Lutz suddenly draws katana to engrave name, making Ricardo shout in panic at careless unsheathing. Ricardo lunges for mental resistance gear, begging Lutz to wear it first. But Lutz calmly refuses and says she will not harm him. When Ricardo demands certainty, Lutz smiles with absurd confidence. He made this katana himself, yet Ricardo grits teeth, unable to understand why that matters. Pressure from blade floods room. Ricardo fumes that everyone adores and trusts katana more than him, its actual owner, while Lutz sets blade in place, lifts hammer and chisel, then shudders under overwhelming force, and admits she exerts amazing pressure. Behind Lutz, long-haired blood-stained woman linked to katana swells into view, vast and terrifying, her hair whipping through darkness as he holds steady before blade and tools. Her cold fingers brush near Lutz's neck, and he senses her without turning. She giggles behind him, close enough to strangle, while Lutz forces himself to stay calm, saying he is not scared and that he is grateful to her. Lutz keeps engraving while speaking to Presence, thanking her for saving Claudia and for all connections he gained since then. As he works, bloodstained woman leans over him, and his gratitude turns gentle. It all began with her, so he offers thanks. With heartfelt respect, Lutz finally gives blade name Camellia. Engraved letters shine along Tang, and long-haired Presence stands quiet, receiving name born from gratitude. After work ends, Lutz and Claudia see Ricardo off outside workshop. Lutz asks if he will use katana soon, and Ricardo says he has request to eliminate werewolves. Claudia smiles, relieved Camellia is in skilled hands, asking him to treat her with love, while Ricardo can only answer awkwardly as summer insects buzz over road ahead. Ricardo hides among forest trees, panting hard after Claudia's parting words. Treat her with love sounds impossible now, because 5 werewolves prowl nearby, sniffing and glancing through brush, while Ricardo grips Camellia and wishes he never had to draw her at all. He weighs danger fast. 5 werewolves at once is too much, yet drawing Camellia might make situation worse. Before he can decide, one beast lunges with claws raised, forcing Ricardo's heart to pound as attack crashes toward him. Ricardo throws himself aside and rolls through leaves as werewolves strike tears past. He comes up surrounded, cloak snapping in forest wind, with snarling beasts closing from every side. Panic grips him. Surrounded and out of options, Ricardo remembers Count's words. Swordsman must be grateful to sword. A werewolf rushes in, and he grimaces as that lesson cuts through fear. Gerhardt's voice echoes next, calling sword. Swordsman's soul and saying, good name makes it shine brighter. Even as werewolves charge, Ricardo rejects blind sword. Worship is different from those fanatics, and he cannot put that much trust in blade. Still, survival leaves no room for pride. Ricardo rips Camellia free and raises curved blade high, shouting her name and ordering Curse to strike. Werewolves pause for one breath, then snarl louder and surge forward. Camellia's curse erupts without Ricardo swinging. Werewolves rear back howling, then turn on themselves and each other, ripping flesh in bloody frenzy, while Ricardo stands stunned at center of madness. Bodies collapse across forest floor. Ricardo realizes werewolves destroyed themselves and their allies, but one remains, roaring through blood and pain. With Camellia already drawn, Ricardo braces both hands on hilt for final strike. Ricardo swings with all his strength, and Camellia cleaves charging werewolf clean in half. Blood sprays through trees as he lands from slash, stunned by brutal sharpness and realizing this is Camellia's true power. Before shock settles, long-haired Presence appears at Ricardo's back, smiling in dark sweetness. She whispers close, asking if she is strong, and Ricardo freezes with sweat on his face as Blade's invisible woman stands beside him. Her face shifts from blood-stained terror into soft beauty, and Ricardo's resolve wavers. He reminds himself he is swordsman called hero, that achievements came from his own skill, and no matter how good sword is, he never gets too attached. Yet denial breaks instantly. Ricardo clutches Camellia while blushing hard, thought screaming never, as if his own heart betrays him the moment Blade's charm shines. Back at castle, Gerhardt walks with blonde armored subordinate and admits he may have been too unreasonable toward Ricardo. He mutters Ricardo is neither subordinate nor apprentice, and forcing his view on him may have gone too far. Blonde subordinate tells Gerhardt not to worry, because Ricardo seems quite fond of katana now. He explains Ricardo finished mission and is resting at inn, offering to take Gerhardt to thank him, while Gerhardt reacts in astonishment at sudden change. At inn, Ricardo sleeps wrapped around Camellia like lover, murmuring her name and promising never to let her go. Outside, Gerhardt hears enough to shudder, joking he hopes he never becomes that obsessed with Blade while another voice laughs. Narration shifts spotlight back toward Lutz and Claudia, noting when some rise into light, others fall into shadows. Elsewhere, someone pounds on Gerhardt's door calling for him when Gerhardt opens. Borvis appears with a crate of freshly finished daggers he ordered. Chapter opens under bright sky with heroic figures posed among stone ruins, blades gleaming as title declares. Chapter 8. The Legendary Sword, Part 1. At Castle, Gerhardt thanks Borvis for finished daggers and tells Josel to carry them inside. Borvis hands over payment details in gold, asking him to check, then hesitates, trying to bring up another matter. But Gerhardt cuts him off and tells him to go home. Borvis refuses to leave quietly. He reminds Gerhardt that Count asked Lutz to make him sword and that hero Ricardo has been doing well on battlefield. Then loudly asks if Ricardo must be missing Borvis' swords and growing impatient for reward. Gerhardt only yawns, unimpressed, before asking if Borvis is one getting impatient. Gerhardt's answer crushes him. Ricardo is currently in love with his new blade, so he doubts Hero will need new sword anytime soon. As Josel sets crate down inside, Gerhardt guesses Ricardo may spend rest of life with that katana, making Borvis panic over how long such love could last. Desperate, Borvis pleads that business is getting tough and begs Gerhardt to push his swords more, even calling them pals. Gerhardt's face hardens, and he snaps that Borvis has wrong idea, has no duty to request Borvis services every time he prepares gift or reward. Gerhardt adds that he will order from Borvis when he needs Borvis handiwork, and that is all. Then he waves him off with sharp shoe, asking if Borvis wants to be chased out like intruder, forcing Borvis to back down. Borvis stops at door and asks one last question. Who will use daggers he delivered the castle knights? Gerhardt answers plainly that his apprentice will use them for spellforging training. Borvis' eyes narrow as he realizes. Training means, if apprentice fails to control magical power, dagger will break. Door shuts with heavy click, leaving Borvis trembling in hallway, furious that pieces he poured heart and soul into will be treated as disposable practice tools. Inside, Josel wonders if blunt truth would offend him, but Gerhardt insists he meant no insult that bought them, because he needed strong, well-made daggers for training, then opens crate to inspect blades. Gerhardt studies crate of daggers and immediately praises work. They look fantastic, with gems set into silver decoration. Josel recognizes Patrick's familiar ornamenting style, then wonders how Borvis could profit charging only 1 gold per dagger. But Gerhardt flatly says that is impossible. Gerhardt calculates real cost while testing blade in hand. With such careful decoration, Borvis would need at least 3 gold each, and to make profit he would need to sell 10 pieces. Gerhardt concludes Borvis made them without caring about profit, hoping to impress Count and get more work, while Josel admits daggers are strong and well made. Josel suggests Gerhardt could have complimented Borvis more, but Gerhardt explodes, refusing to let that man's blades excite him. Josel reminds him he was completely engrossed when he swung Demon's Wail, and Gerhardt answers that blade that does not feel thrilling to wield is absolute failure. Gerhardt doubles down with stern face, declaring blade that does not make you want to cut someone is not blade at all. Josel nervously calls that too extreme, then shifts topic and asks how Gerhardt first met Borvis, since they seem to have known each other long time. Gerhardt sits by open crate and admits he is not unwilling to share, but recounting his history with Borvis feels embarrassing. Josel's curiosity only grows, and Gerhardt sighs before asking what comes to mind when someone says legendary sword. Josel imagines shining sword planted in earth and says famous swords passed down through generations have romantic appeal. Gerhardt rejects word romantic, insisting someone who lived by sword should think of legendary blades as nothing more than tools. Gerhardt's memory turns back 40 years. He was living as adventurer with 3 companions, repeatedly challenging dungeon, where legendary sword was rumored to rest, a task that took several years. After countless attempts, group finally reached deepest part of dungeon, believing legendary sword would bring glory. At first, everything seemed to go as planned until gigantic unseen monster, unlike anything they had faced, waited in depths as guardian of treasure. Gerhardt remembers first encounter with dungeon guardian. They should have fled, but treasure they had chased for Years sat right before their eyes. So they charged instead, blades raised against monstrous tentacled beast guarding chest. It was not bravery. Greed blinded them, and Gerhardt admits they recklessly threw themselves at overwhelming enemy. Steel flashed, tentacles lashed, and every strike turned battle into chaos. Somehow, two survivors defeated monster, but victory came at price of two companions. Among broken stones and bloodied corpses, Gerhardt finally understood how shallow their dream of glory had been. Even then, despair could not stop them. One survivor urged Gerhardt not to cry and remember what they fought for, pointing toward chest that promised legendary sword, glory, and fame for fallen companions too. Chest opened with creak, but hope collapsed at once. Inside lay not sacred shining treasure, only old bronze sword, leaving both battered survivors staring in disbelief. Back in Gerhardt's workshop, Josel blurts out that legendary sword was only bronze sword. He asks if ancient manuscript was fake, but Gerhardt answers not necessarily, reminding him it was written centuries ago. Gerhardt explains that people once fought with clubs and stone axes, so bronze swords were likely treasures of unmatched sharpness. Over centuries, swordsmanship and steel advanced, turning sacred old blades into relics that could no longer pierce modern armor. In memory, Gerhardt grips bronze sword anyway, crushed by cost of two companions and loss of hope. Rage takes over, and he swings so hard at stone that blade smashes uselessly against rock. Gerhardt's memory reveals truth. Borvis was only companion who survived dungeon with him. After that bitter failure, both men left adventuring behind. Borvis became blacksmith, while Gerhardt chose path of apprentice spellforger, each chasing new craft after scars of dungeon. Back then, their disappointment burned into defiance. Refusing to accept that legendary sword could be so dull, they vowed to master their crafts and forge legendary sword with their own hands blade that would make people tremble centuries later. Gerhardt falls silent, face heavy with old memories, then catches himself with clatter at table. Josel says he finally understands why Gerhardt is so passionate about blades, and Gerhardt admits he may have said too much. But when Josel notes Borvis once shared that passion, Gerhardt looks away, uneasy, from window above crate of ornate daggers. Gerhardt says Borvis seems to have forgotten perfecting craft. To him, old comrade has become boring man who mass-produces unexciting blades, caring only about protecting position as workshop master. Gerhardt grits teeth, morning dream of legendary sword left behind. Elsewhere, Borvis snaps after being called fool, but another craftsman yanks him onward, demanding whether he knows who made sword count obsesses over. Borvis says none of masters know. Yet, messenger warns guild meeting is starting, and Borvis may lose even more work if late. At guild meeting, bearded elder begins as usual by dividing work. Large order from knights will be shared among workshops this month, leaving Borvis stunned and resentful, because he always took every job connected to count. Whispers circle table like knives. Other craftsmen murmur that Borvis no longer gets count's jobs, that some stranger stole his work, and some laugh he had hoarded everything anyway. Borvis sits rigid in center, shaking under their pity and mockery. Pain suddenly throbs in Borvis' chest, and he clutches himself, sweating as rage and humiliation twist together. He curses every one of them for pitying him, despite never crafting single piece for count. But when older craftsman asks if something is wrong, Borvis forces out that he is fine. Borvis visits Patrick's workshop, and Patrick greets him with huge smile and open arms. Borvis asks about blade Patrick helped make for count, but Patrick launches into excited praise, calling it excellent and best job he ever had. Borvis loses patience and demands answer, saying he did not come to watch Patrick's weird dance. Patrick blushes over chance to make dress for lovely girl, then refuses to reveal swordsmith's name, citing confidentiality and privacy when Borvis asks if name was on blade. Coins clink across table, as Borvis tries different method. He says he wants to ask fellow craftsmen few things, but Patrick toys with coin and teases him for enthusiasm, admitting he does not care much yet still listening. Patrick finally says inscription named Katana Winds Weep, and maker appeared to be Lutz. Borvis stiffens at unfamiliar name, wondering if Lutz belongs to guild. Patrick calmly notes if not, then he must outside walls. Borvis erupts. Outside castle walls sounds ridiculous to him, and he shouts that shady outside craftsmen cannot even enter guild, much less craft decent weapons. Patrick's eyes sharpen, then he says guild itself is problem, and asks Borvis what guild's purpose is. Borvis recites guild's role: proper allocation and circulation of raw materials, plus education and protection of craftsmen. Patrick confirms first point but questions second, asking whether system protects all craftsmen or only workshop masters. Patrick arranges coins like hierarchy and exposes flaw. Guild limits who can become master. So skilled apprentices who threaten masters get sent away for training and ignored for years. Bad practices keep running because system shields those already on top. Patrick leans closer and suggests Lutz may also be brilliant apprentice kicked out by guild. Borvis calls idea absurd, but Patrick asks if he can deny it and says masters underestimate apprentices, while Borvis defends secrecy as necessary to protect workshop techniques. Patrick presses Borvis harder, repeating that educating craftsmen should be guild's very reason to exist. Then he asks what people say about Borvis' own workshop, and Borvis freezes as ugly rumors surface. His place is called the craftsman's graveyard, where apprentices are not nurtured and have no future. Those words crush Borvis. He stands before his workshop, fists trembling, while mocking faces loom around memory of building. The craftsman's graveyard echoes like curse, and Borvis can only sweat beneath weight of name. Others have given his life's work. Borvis clutches his chest as pain throbs through him, insisting it cannot be true. He says he gives his apprentices proper meals, wages, and training, that he has always given them everything they need. Patrick smiles and answers that if so, the graveyard rumor must be baseless. Patrick turns to leave, relieved that Borvis' workshop is not in danger. But Borvis remains rooted in place, fist clenched, pride shaking. After 40 years running his workshop, he cannot accept slander that paints his care as neglect. Unable to bear it, Borvis storms back and calls for Wilson. A long-haired apprentice appears, startled, and Borvis declares him his most skilled apprentice. Then he orders Wilson to pour everything he has learned into making sword, not for sale, but as test of his readiness for master's promotion exam. Workshop falls silent at command. Wilson's face shines with sudden hope, and he promises to show his very best work before hurrying off. Other apprentices whisper that Master is finally thinking about future, while Borvis watches without speaking. Whispers continue around workshop, wondering if Wilson will become successor at last. Borvis stands firm, telling himself that 40 years of forging and cultivated technique have become his flesh and blood, and that his apprentices will prove those years were no mistake. Wilson works at Forge, hammer ringing again and again. Nearby apprentices quietly doubt whether Borvis will truly hand over position, expecting him to delay succession somehow. A few days later, Wilson presents Blade with nervous pride, saying he exhausted all his knowledge on it. While Borvis answers with low, appraising hum, Wilson waits, sweating, as Borvis raises newly forged sword and studies it under bright gleam. Silence stretches too long, until Wilson nervously asks what he thinks. Then Borvis drops to his knees with heavy thud, leaving Wilson startled and confused. Borvis breaks into strained laughter, tears and sweat running down his face. Wilson panics, asking what is wrong and whether he did good job. Borvis finally praises him, saying he did excellent work and followed his teachings. Yet something in that praise sounds painful. Truth cuts Borvis deeper than any blade. Wilson's sword has nothing unique, no personality, only sharp iron rodand that makes it terribly boring. In Wilson's careful obedience, Borvis sees copy of himself, copy of decrepit man he has become. The insult craftsman's graveyard suddenly feels perfect to Borvis. Kneeling with Wilson's sword in hand, he admits he only raised mass-produced craftsmen who did exactly as instructed. Then, shaken but sincere, he apologizes and promises Wilson he will teach everything he knows without leaving anything out. Borvis gives Wilson clear path forward. Forge another sword, submit it for approval, and if Count accepts it, Wilson will officially become master. Wilson stares in disbelief as Borvis asks if he understands. Then his answer bursts through workshop. Yes. Apprentices gather around Wilson in celebration. While Borvis watches from distance, his face settles into hard honesty. He admits he does not have what it takes to be master, that he only wanted title so he could freely make swords. But once he got there, all he cared about was protecting his position. Decision to step down leaves Borvis freer than ever. Standing tall in workshop apron, he asks himself what he truly wants now. Answer comes sharp and clean. He does not want to mindlessly shape metal, he wants to forge sword, and keep improving his skills. Later, in tavern, Gerhardt drinks as Borvis arrives with another request. Gerhardt asks what troublesome request it is this time, and Borvis leans forward with hands clasped. He wants Gerhardt to introduce him to blacksmith named Lutz. In Tavern Glow, Gerhardt notes. Borvis gave up master position rather easily, but Borvis admits he had been too set in his ways, and should have done it sooner. He still has not retired, though he arranged free use of workshop forge, and Gerhardt, drinking, asks what troublesome request comes next. Borvis finally says it plainly. He wants Gerhardt to introduce him to blacksmith named Lutz. Gerhardt stiffens at request, suspecting Borvis plans to report unregistered Lutz to Guild, and even imagines Lutz cornered by faceless guildmen. Borvis slams that suspicion aside, shouting he does not care about registration. What he wants is to meet Lutz and ask him to teach forging. Gerhardt questions sudden hunger for new techniques after stepping down, warning Borvis cannot expect to appear at Lutz's door and demand craft secrets. Borvis answers with blazing pride. In return, he will teach Lutz everything he knows, hoping that offer piques young Smith's interest. Gerhardt asks whether grizzled veteran can bow to much younger Lutz, but Borvis says their own elders shouted at them during training too, and Gerhardt admits Borvis has thought it through. Decision made, Gerhardt strikes table hard enough to send bowls, mugs, and bottle jumping. He declares he will go with Borvis and ask Lutz in person, while Borvis pumps fist in gratitude, saying he owes Gerhardt one. At Lutz's workshop, Lutz smiles and accepts request as knowledge sharing. Gerhardt and Borvis fall silent, worried by how easily he agrees, and Gerhardt warns that deal could spread Lutz's unique craft. Lutz scratches his head, explaining that as unregistered blacksmith, unable to do business within castle walls, there is no point monopolizing his methods. He also says he is interested in Borvis techniques, and Borvis eagerly vows to teach him anything he wants to know. Then Lutz's confidence sharpens. Even if his methods spread, he says, one fact will not change. He is still best. Gerhardt can only call claim bold. Borvis stares in silence, and chairs clatter as tension rises around table. Borvis bows over table with fierce resolve, calling out to Lutz and saying he is eager to learn from him. Lutz answers in kind, reaches across, and their hands lock in firm handshake, turning rivalry into shared craft. Back at castle, Jozel's spellforging practice goes badly. 2 daggers lie among cracked gems and faint magic, while Jozel apologizes because he poured too much mana into first dagger and too little into second, turning gem-encrusted weapons into trash. Gerhardt only laughs and tosses more gems at him, saying spellforgers must treat gems as consumables. Gerhardt roars at Jozel not to be intimidated. To him, materials are still materials no matter price, and if fear makes Jozel shrink back, he will never become more than mediocre spellforger. Jozel grips tools and repeats lesson to himself, trying to steady shaking hands. Sometime later, Jozel collapses across work table, soaked in sweat, muttering that he has fished. Gerhardt inspects dagger with sharp eye, then tests it against cloth. At first blade crackles, then bites in, and finally sparks with prickling heat. Sudden burst of flame blooms from cloth, startling Jozel while Gerhardt rises in surprise. Gerhardt praises him. Jozel has crafted fire dagger. Joe smiles, but quickly admits that if it takes this long to light fire, it probably will not help much in combat. Still, he cannot deny it is worth respect. Gerhardt disagrees with narrow judgment. With 1 dagger alone, adventurers could start fires, and fire remains most versatile attribute. He estimates it could sell for about 15 gold, leaving Jozel stunned over whether that would even be profitable. While Gerhardt laughs and says profit takes more tricks. Lesson does not end there. Gerhardt declares Jozel is not done for day and orders him on to next piece. Jozel answers weakly but obeys, hammer tapping again, while Gerhardt thinks diligent man like him can surely master spellforging. Yet old spellforger wonders about someone else entirely. Unlike Jozel, that man is already old. At forge, Borvis hammers beside Lutz, sweat flying as steel rings under heavy blows. Lutz watches with focused smile, while Borvis realizes with shock that even now he may still have much to learn. Gerhardt's worried thought hangs over that effort, wondering how much Borvis can still absorb. Lutz begins with basics, explaining katana starts from tamahagane. Heated steel is pounded flat, split into small squares, then separated by roll. Softer low-carbon shingane for core, harder high-carbon kawagane for outer layer. Split pieces stack on lever base, enter furnace, and fuse into single mass. Forging grows harsher. Single mass is pounded to drive out impurities, cut with chisel, turned over, and pounded again. Process repeats about 8 times for shingane and about 15 for kawagane, until inner and outer steels are ready to combine. Shingane wraps inside kawagane, 2 metals heated and hammered into one. Lutz stretches fused piece into rod, shaping it toward katana form, while layered steel gains opposing traits. Hard, yet flexible. Hammer rings loud, and Lutz declares that contradiction's secret of blade strength. Borvis watches, stunned, calling it amazing, as if Lutz breathes life into metal. Lutz turns surprise back on him, asking why Borvis reacts that way when he too has breathed life into swords for decades. Borvis falters, admitting he used to. Memory pulls Borvis back to younger days, when he worked diligently on every sword and aimed to make each blade better than last. Standing beside Lutz now, he feels those forlorn feelings return, and grips hammer with renewed desire to forge his best sword. Then Claudia peeks in with tea, startled by intensity around Borvis. Claudia notices Borvis drenched in sweat and suggests he rest, while Lutz agrees he can lie down if needed. Borvis gulps tea but refuses, insisting he is fine. This is not enough to justify break, and he asks Master Lutz to teach him more. Claudia quietly smiles that he really loves swords. Borvis keeps hammering under Lutz's guidance, drawing eyes from Borvis apprentices in workshop. Some wonder whether Lutz is new apprentice, but others explain he is only teaching for day, as thanks for help Borvis has given. Lutz laughs that Borvis seems to be having fun. From distance, apprentices compare cheerful Borvis to old master who once taught them, uneasy that he acts like workshop still belongs to him. One worries if he keeps showing up like this, true master will become hard to tell. Wilson stands near doorway in silence, hearing talk that Borvis supposedly retired yet remains present. Footsteps crunch over rocky ground as Gerhardt and Borvis stand atop cliff under open sky. Gerhardt asks how training with Lutz is going and whether it has helped, and Borvis crosses his arms with huge grin, answering that it has been fun. Borvis praises Lutz's methods as truly fascinating, saying katana craft is close to sword craft yet clearly different, and that craftsman life never has dull moment. Gerhardt teases him for talking big after recently smoldering in forge, but Borvis snaps back before clenching fist, insisting none of that time was wasted. Borvis throws fist toward blazing sun and declares he is one with heaven, earth, and God. Moment later, Grand Pose drains him dry. He hangs there gasping, sweat running down his face. Gerhardt stares at Borvis miserable panting, and questions whether he can make new katana like that. Borvis wheezes but refuses to back down, promising to do it and make blade of lifetime. Gerhardt recalls Lutz's bold claim that he is best at craft, and admits young man may be cheeky, but keeps producing excellent blades. Gerhardt measures Lutz against their old foolish selves, who once believed bronze sword could make them heroes, and says Lutz is far more remarkable. That memory stirs old party faces, and Borvis asks if, once things calm down, they should visit graves of fallen comrades. Borvis assumes Gerhardt means bringing flowers to dungeon graves, but Gerhardt grins and says he means exactly that dungeon. Borvis panics, warning they will die before deepest part, while Gerhardt fires back that they already conquered it once and are not same as before because now they are geezers. Both old men end up slumped over cliff edge, panting hard after argument. Borvis jokes he might place one of his own blades in treasure chest, because that would beat bronze sword, and Gerhardt warns not to put anything too good there, or he will regret letting it go. They smirk at each other, then laughter rolls across mountains. Back in forge, Borvis holds up failed katana-like lump and mutters that it turned into scorched stinking of soot, he imagines. Gerhardt laughing, and dead comrades haunting him if he offered them such thing. Then admits 40 years of sword experience cannot carry him through katana craft. His eyes shift to box of materials, and hand grabs chunk of steel to try again. Borvis grips raw steel and steels himself again. Refusing defeat, he vows to keep trying until he succeeds, then returns to anvil, hammer crashing in bright sparks while apprentices watch from doorway in uneasy silence, watching him struggle. Younger craftsmen sweat and mutter that blacksmithing is only job to them, but Borvis looks almost joyful. Even bent over and drenched, he keeps striking metal, and their frustration sharpens because he seems to be having such great time. Failures pile up. Second attempt becomes another plain steel rod, and third attempt cracks despite coming close. Lutz studies results and suggests way to stop katana from fracturing, while Borvis takes notes and Claudia stands nearby as instruction continues. Hammering echoes through workshop from day into night, until final blow lands with heavy thonk. Borvis wipes sweat from brow, laughing that he is not used to this kind of work, then asks if effort was worth it. New blade flashes across anvil with rough but real katana shape. Borvis lifts it, admitting it feels like prototype, but could at least slay goblin, and awe rises in him. This reminds him of first sword he ever made, when holding steel felt like grasping legendary weapon. That old dream returns full force. Borvis laughs that even this blade is better than bronze sword in dungeon treasure chest, then coughs from exhaustion. Still, gripping katana, he declares decades with steel mean something, and he can make katana that shows his own strengths. Blood dots floor, and Borvis wipes sweat from face, wondering if he should rest before rejecting idea. Under crescent moon, Hammer Song continues, and he starts fifth attempt, pouring fresh passion into blade despite shaking body. Sweat drips down Borvis' face as focus narrows to steel. Each hammer blow feels less like force, and more like listening. He can almost hear metal breathing. Raising blade, he senses katana. It wants to become is same katana he wants to make. Borvis hammers through night, lost in work at old age. Steel shines before him, sharp and brilliant, and he thinks masterpiece is about to be born. Blood slips from his mouth. Yet he calls feeling true happiness. His body fails piece by piece. Sweat drips from boot, heart pounds hard, breath breaks. But Borvis smiles through blood and calls to Gerhardt, saying this is what they sought long ago. Then heartbeat slams one final time. Inside workshop, Borvis sways with hammer raised, whispering about legendary blade. Tool drops, body thuds to floor beneath crescent moon, and darkness closes over forge. Morning comes over graveyard. Mourners gather around coffin, and whispers spread. Apprentice found Borvis dead in workshop while he was working. Gerhardt stands among crowd, face grim as people murmur his name. Borvis lies in coffin, surrounded by flowers, peaceful after final labor. One mourner says he had retired, yet remained blacksmith until bitter end, while Claudia holds bouquet with soft, sad smile. By river, flowers drift away on current. Lutz, Claudia, and Gerhardt stand together in quiet farewell, and Gerhardt states blunt truth. Borvis died while forging katana. Gerhardt unwraps unfinished blade and hands it to Lutz. He says Borvis was found collapsed on ground, clutching piece like priceless treasure, and calls him big idiot who bit dust before finishing job. When Gerhardt asks Lutz to complete katana for him, Lutz hesitates, saying it might be best left to Borvis apprentices. But Gerhardt admits he thought so too. Wilson answers that he knows little about katana, and says Gerhardt may dispose of it as he likes. Borvis was not good master, and could not form proper bond with apprentices, so result stands. Lutz accepts wrapped blade, gently noting Gerhardt protecting katana also respects Borvis' way of life. And Gerhardt smiles. Back at forge, Lutz faces roaring fire and admits he has taken on tough job, finishing another man's posthumous work. With katana already about 80% complete, only tempering and polishing remain. But those final steps carry all risk. Lutz grips heated blade with steady hands, knowing tempering depends on experience and intuition. One mistake could fracture steel, so he plunges it into water with resolve, promising Borvis he will not blunder here even before polish. He says he can feel blade quality. As Lutz begins polishing, confidence spreads across his face. Water and steel whisper under his hands, and he declares this one is surely masterpiece. Proof Borvis' last work survived final trial. Finished katana returns to Gerhardt. Lutz offers it across work table, saying Borvis would likely be satisfied. While Claudia asks if blade should receive name 2, she suggests singular steel, born from man who tirelessly sought power of steel. And Gerhardt tests name with quiet interest. Gerhardt carries blade outside beneath trees, drawing it into sunlight. Long edge gleams, and he accepts name at once, promising Borvis he will carry singular steel with him. Weight hits him fast. Gerhardt mutters blade is heavy and too long, while memory of Borvis mocks him for being geezer and tells him to ask Lutz to shorten it. Gerhardt snaps back that he will not shorten it. Instead, he will adjust his stance and make spell-forged blade his own. Needing place to train swings, Gerhardt finds huge rock-blocking path. Bold voice dares him to show sharpness of singular steel by cutting rock in half. And Gerhardt turns toward challenge with narrowed eyes. Gerhardt grins, then shuts reckless idea down. Katana is not meant to cut rocks, and he calls demand unreasonable, useless, and unrestrained. Still, with singular steel raised, he warns that if he is careless, Borvis' final work could break in half. Gerhardt swings singular steel anyway, driving blade through huge rock with fierce focus. Edge bites deep with sharp crick, proving Borvis' last work holds even under impossible strain. Boulder splits apart in roaring cracks. Dust exploding around Gerhardt's stance, he lowers blade and marvels. Not even chip marks steel, and admiration for Borvis' final piece bursts out of him. Gerhardt lifts katana toward bright sky, calling it their sacred blade, their legendary sword. In warmth of memory, Borvis appears with arms folded and proud smile, as if asking whether Gerhardt finally understands. Lutz reflects on Borvis taking on katana making at advanced age, and leaving behind best blade he ever made. Admiration lingers, but it turns inward. If Borvis kept chasing pinnacle, Lutz asks what challenge waits for him as blacksmith. Decorated box lands on table with dull thunk. Lutz admits obvious goal is greatest blade, Yet question cuts deeper. For Borvis, singular steel was answer. But what would count as Lutz's own greatest blade? Nobody will give him that answer. Alone in workshop, Lutz handles cloth-wrapped steel, and thinks not even his father gave such answer. Even if father knew, Lutz imagines he would only offer vague words. Only Blade can teach you that. Claudia bursts in bright and loud, greeting Lutz for waking early, and teasing him about passion from previous night. Her cheer falters when she notices his serious face. Then her eyes drop to katana laid on cloth before him. Broken katana flashes across table, blade snapped clean from hilt. Claudia recoils, asking what on earth happened, while chapter title announces new threat. Chapter 10. Night Killer. Claudia stares at broken katana on table, stunned by aura pouring from it despite snap blade. Curiosity wins and she asks to touch it, but Lutz snaps warning. Be careful, that katana is terrifyingly sharp. Before Claudia even reaches it, blood sprays from her hand. She yelps and pulls back, while Lutz rushes over shouting her name. Shaken, she says blade cut her before she touched it, and Lutz tells her to look closer at wound. Claudia opens palm and freezes. No cut remains. Lutz explains blade is too sharp. Getting near it can feel like being sliced, and without preparation, no one can wield it properly or escape pain. Claudia's awe turns grand as she imagines broken katana like national treasure. Maybe demonic sword church would confiscate. When she asks when Lutz made such blade, he corrects her at once. It is not his work. Lutz holds broken katana steady and reveals truth. His father crafted it. Claudia erupts in shock, then clutches weapon with fresh curiosity, demanding story behind katana and why it broke. Lutz first tells her to put on clothes, then agrees, since his father is like her father too. Seated across table, Lutz begins with Rolfus. His father lived inside walled city, held citizenship, belonged to guild, and worked legally as blacksmith and craftsman. By reputation, he was among best, likely only kind of smith who could make such katana, until he was sent out as journeyman. Lutz explains journey had official excuse. Physical, warrior-like training. Real reason was Uglerguld masters drove out skilled apprentices who might threaten their positions. Rolfus chose not to rot under old men clinging to power, but to wander and learn new techniques. Rolfus' resolve carried him across ocean in search of weapon-making essence. Claudia marvels at his drive, and Lutz says his father reached certain eastern country, prospered through initiative, and taught his craft wherever he traveled. Rolfus traded knowledge with eastern craftsmen, learning new swordsmithing techniques as he taught his own. After 10 years, he returned home, set up small workshop outside castle walls, and lived by sharpening blades, fixing pots, making horseshoes, and forging katanas until his strange weapons earned notice. That reputation finally carried him to castle. Lutz explains Rolfus received chance to present katana to Marquis, and Claudia blurts shock at how casually he says it. Lutz agrees it must have taken hard work, then reveals blade was made to be as sharp as possible. Demonstration begins before crowd, and Rolfus cuts through armor in one clean sweep. Metal splits, pieces crash onto stone, and bystanders gasp that armor was cut in half. Sharpness keeps speaking louder than words. Rocks split apart, massive log falls under blade, and crowd breaks into applause, praising sword none of them has seen before. Advisors urge Marquis to recognize foreign blade's worth, while son at his side praises father's eye. Praise pours over Rolfus' katana, and pride swells inside him. He tells himself leaving guild and devoting himself to craft was right choice, then declares he has become greatest swordsmith under heavens, as Marquis calls blade worthy of Eldenberger family. Marquis Blonde's son steps forward, asking for moment to swing katana himself. Rolfus cannot refuse if Marquis allows it, thinking his future may be secured if son likes blade, and Marquis tells him to let boy try. Moment Blonde noble grips katana. Rolfus spots problem. His knees are weak, his stance untrained, and Rolfus warns blade's extreme sharpness comes from being thin and fragile. Vertical slash can cut anything, but if swing is even slightly off, too late. Blonde noble swings. Katana strikes armor with harsh clink, blade wobbles, and everyone freezes as Rolfus shouts that he told him to wait. Marquis and court stare in alarm while Rolfus clenches jaw, knowing danger has already arrived. Blade spins away after bad swing, and Blonde Noble crashes down screaming. Sudden slash explodes across his face, drawing panic from Rolfus as blood sprays near Katana's path. Blonde Noble clutches his face and cries that bleeding will not stop, while Rolfus fears his katana has injured Noble. Servant rushes in and begs young master to look properly. Not one drop of blood stains blade, and he is not injured anywhere. Rolfus glares as crowd begins laughing, guessing Noble only imagined cut because sword was so sharp. Humiliated, young master turns anger on Rolfus, calling whole demonstration scam and insisting katana could never cut armor. Blonde Noble doubles down, accusing Rolfus of cheap tricks with armor and log. His fury spreads through crowd, and whispers turn against Rolfus, saying broken blade proves his sword was dull or fake. While Rolfus trembles and insists his katana's sharpness is unmatched, Marquis finally calls Rolfus forward. With court watching, he apologizes, then orders Rolfus to leave and take Blade with him, ending chance at recognition. Lutz's narration says his father was banished from Marquisate and never found another chance for success. Back in present, Lutz tells Claudia his father drifted after that disappointment, met his mother, and lived rest of life in rundown house. Claudia tries to soften story, saying son who inherited his skills now forges blades loved by nobility. But Lutz says his father never treated it so seriously. Lutz remembers father teaching him at forge without bitterness, never asking him to avenge him or become copy of him. To Lutz, old man seemed disillusioned, like someone who no longer expected good from world. Lutz recalls father's words about broken katana, made without regard for practicality or wielder, perfect symbol of shallow existence and something to discard after death. Yet Lutz grips hilt and says it was result of his father's challenge, one that still pushes him forward whenever he thinks about greatest blade. Night settles over Lutz's workshop, moon hanging bright beyond trees. In bed, Claudia notices Lutz lying awake with heavy eyes and asks why he looks so serious. Lutz admits he was thinking about making a sword. Claudia perks up at once, surprised by wording not a katana but a sword. Singular steel still dominates Lutz's thoughts. He says he cannot get Borvis blade out of his head. Though made only to cut any target, it still qualifies as the greatest blade. And Lutz admits he never expected Borvis to reach such height. Claudia grabs Lutz's cheeks and teases that he sounds like he is admitting defeat. Lutz tries to argue, but in his mind, Borvis' masterpiece feels like direct challenge. Can Lutz compete in Borvis field too? Lutz protests that even imagining it feels unfair if he does not try. Since he has made swords before, his expression hardens as resolve returns. She may not know how far he can compete in Borvis field, but to make greatest blade, he believes this challenge must be accepted. Excitement hits practical wall. Lutz remembers he is out of iron sand, but Claudia smiles and accepts difficulty as part of their path. With soft kiss and steady faith, she tells him not to lose focus, certain he will make excellent sword that knocks Borvis off his feet in heaven. Next day, river runs through open mountains, while Lutz gathers iron sand from water with bucket and tool. As droplets fall back into stream, he wonders what kind of sword he should make. Kneeling by riverbank, Lutz refuses to say he cannot do what Borvis did outside his specialty, yet he knows random work would become half-baked. So he thinks through sword's purpose. Unlike katana, sword can be wielded in many ways, and he needs clear image of waiter wit will fight. Over meal, Lutz asks Claudia if there is anyone she would like to chop up. Claudia nearly chokes at strange question, and Lutz explains he needs purpose for sword he is making, not because he wants her to use it. When he asks who she would cut, Claudia casually names deadbeat knights. Claudia's old grudge surfaces with smile, imagining knights who detained her on false charges, stripped naked and displayed as severed heads. Lutz sweats at resentment that clearly has not faded, then thinks through target. Knights are usually at barracks, so a raid would mean facing big group alone. Lutz tests idea in his head, first picturing longsword, able to blow away many enemies, then rejects it because it cannot swing indoors. He refines concept. Body should be short enough to thrust and block one-handed, while blade should be somewhat thick, so user will not lose duel. Claudia watches uneasily and asks if his ideas are getting wildly disturbing. Lutz sinks deeper into brutal calculation, muttering about cutting one knight, then two, then needing more to defeat them all. Suddenly, he smirks and thanks Claudia, saying he can make interesting sword now. Claudia stiffens as his eyes scare her, while Lutz realizes he must be careful. Claudia warns him that sword based on raiding knight barracks could make people think he is plotting rebellion. Lutz groans, but fire is already lit. He says once he wants to make something, he has to make it. Claudia can only sigh that sword fanatics have no cure, while Lutz walks away recalling his father told him to use forge however he likes. Night rings with hammer blows. As Lutz begins first sword in long time, he wonders if Borvis felt same awkwardness while learning katanas, because Lutz is used to katana work and may be hitting with too much force. Lutz studies new blade, worrying whether it came out perfectly straight and symmetrical. and whether both edges were tempered equally. Double-edged sword demands balance from both sides. One side cannot cut well while other fails. Difficulty only fuels him more, and hammer crashes down again as excitement grows. Sweat on his face turns into grin. Frustration of failing to get it right, and rivalry with another craftsman, bring feelings he never had when working alone. Alone in workshop, hammering tool meant to cut people down, Lutz admits he is having lot of fun and jokes that swordsmiths are hopeless bunch. Morning breaks outside Lutz's workshop, but calm does not last. Claudia grips finished sword as power bursts from its edge. Scolding Lutz for not knowing restraint, he calls it little fired up, while she shouts he forged not excellent sword, but freaking magic sword. Claudia admits she appreciates it, yet pins source of blade's birth on her own pent-up resentment. Sword's sinister force seems to scream that Maker has insatiable desire to kill knights, so she suggests hiding it away without even naming it. Before someone feels driven to storm Knight's barracks, Lutz accepts storing it away, but asks to name it first. Claudia offers to do it, then brightens because she already has one, Night Killer. Lutz pauses, then admits, name is not bad, rather, it is pretty good. With Claudia's approval, Lutz says he can confidently name it that, though he expected something sillier like Mr. Night Chopper. Claudia smiles but warns he will have to say goodbye to Night Killer for a while, and Lutz agrees to let it sleep in storage beside his father's memento. Before sword can be put away, Gerhardt appears at window like ghost and calls whole thing waste. Lutz and Claudia jump in shock, but Gerhardt says he arrived just now, right as Lutz finished new piece, then eyes sword and judges it fine, though rather small. Gerhardt reads weapon almost instantly. From length, he calls it close quarters side weapon, then sharper still a sword for surprise attack on enemy hideout. Lutz falters as Gerhardt names hidden concept almost exactly, leaving Claudia to note he reads Lutz like open book. Gerhardt refuses to let such blade rot in storage and asks Lutz to sell it to him for his apprentice. Lutz panics, reminding him sword was designed to target knights in barracks, but Gerhardt sees no problem and praises how few people could grasp its concept at glance. Gerhardt sweetens deal with 50 gold and promise of silence, and Lutz gives in. Later, as Gerhardt walks away proudly with Night Killer, Claudia suddenly recalls his apprentice is high-ranking knight, and Lutz realizes why that matters far too late. Josel sinks into heavy silence as Gerhardt's words echo in memory. He must spellforge new sword, make it his best blade, and accept gift named Night Killer. Even while Josel carefully works at desk and thanks his master, doubt keeps gnawing at him. Power erupts from Night Killer in Josel's hands, black force roaring up blade as he recoils. Horrified, he asks why Gerhardt would give him such ominous sword, begging to know reason and purpose while Gerhardt's answer stays brutally plain. There is no deeper meaning. While Josel wastes himself searching for meaning in simple gift, focus shifts to certain noble family's castle. Inside treasure room, gold, crowns, jewels, and swords glitter in abundance, yet black-haired noble holding crown finds none of it useful. He declares it no good, then strides out through grand halls with servant behind him. Even after turning Eldenberger family treasury upside down, he cannot find anything worthy of negotiation. Frustration sharpens as he asks what those barbarians could possibly want. Servant addresses him as Master Beowulf and explains their ruler is known for martial prowess, limiting options to swords or other weapons. Yet family's finest sword is only inherited heirloom. Beowulf mutters about needing blacksmith skilled enough to make one. Then memory strikes. 20 years ago, swordsmith came with blade of exceptional sharpness. To save his brother's face, they treated that man like scammer, but servant admits he was genuinely great swordsmith and wonders if he still lives. Beowulf seizes possibility harder, even if that man retired, maybe apprentice or son inherited same talent. In his mind, hammer rings over hot steel, and hope becomes demand. Someone able to craft supreme blade impressive enough for those barbarians. Elsewhere, castle rises under troubled sky. As caption states, Josel remains uneasy. Gripping Night Killer close, sweat on his face, he keeps asking why Gerhardt gave him this night-killing swordwafter title appears. Craftsman's oath. Gerhardt gives Josel blunt answer. There is no profound meaning behind gift. He only wanted him to have good sword. But Josel snaps back that blade is named Night Killer, and its short build plus abnormal bloodlust make its purpose painfully clear. It was made to slay knights in confined spaces. Josel's panic swells into destiny. Since Night Killer somehow came to him, high-ranking knight, he declares it must be fate and claims to sense God's invisible hand. Gerhardt stares back, baffled. while Josel demands to know what God has planned, who he must slay, when and where. 3 sleepless days later, Josel looks half-broken from overthinking and admits he still cannot find answer. Then he turns to Gerhardt and asks to meet Lutz, because he must know exact motive for forging Night Killer and what he should do from now on. Gerhardt silently weighs truth behind Sword's birth. Lutz likely held grudge against Knights, after Claudia was arrested on false charges, telling Josel that would only disturb him more. So Gerhardt decides to let them meet and agrees to tell him where Lutz lives. Before Josel leaves, Gerhardt warns him to show Lutz proper respect, pointing out that Josel tends to look down on people outside city walls. He adds one more warning. Lutz lives with his girlfriend, and both are rather eccentric, so Josel should keep retorts low and engage them peacefully. Josel leaves with stiff promise to be careful, door slamming behind him. Gerhardt stays behind with singular steel in hand, grumbling that grief and seriousness can become problems of their own. Imagining Josel causing trouble at Lutz's home, he finally gives up and mutters that he no longer cares what happens. A knock comes soon after at Lutz's door. Gerhardt expects Josel, but when door creeps open, shadowed visitor whispers his name with glowing eyes and a reaching hand. Gerhardt recoils in shock, recognizing unexpected intruder with terrified cry. At Lutz's workshop, Josel looms in doorway with knightly authority, startling Lutz and Claudia into silence. He announces himself as Josel, high-ranking knight, says Gerhardt told him about them, and demands to know if this is residence of Lutz, swordsmith. Lutz forces polite smile and confirms he is swordsmith Lutz, while Claudia asks how they can help. Josel grabs sword at his waist and declares he came to ask about this blade. Lutz freezes at once. No doubt remains his Night Killer. Sold to Gerhardt, now carried by Gerhardt's apprentice. Claudia quietly wonders if they can trust this apprentice, or if he might be some scoundrel who took Gerhardt's sword. Lutz rejects that idea fast. Anyone stealing from Gerhardt probably would not still be breathing. With that settled, Lutz invites Josel inside, while Claudia notes this man behaves far more like proper knight than his master. Inside, silence turns heavy. Claudia stares, Lutz fidgets, and Josel sits stiffly across from them, with Night Killer laid on table. Lutz nudges Claudia to at least serve tea, but she refuses with cold huff, making her hatred of knights clear as daylight. Trying to break tension, Josel asks whether Claudia is perhaps Lutz's wife. Both stare back in blank shock. Lutz nervously asks Claudia what their relationship is again, and Claudia defines it as business partners, friends and lovers all added together, but not divisible by 3. Lutz agrees that explanation fits, though it is painful to explain to others. Claudia says most people would be happy if she simply called herself wife or bride. Both answer, yep. Then Lutz shrugs with something like that, making Josel explode and demand whether they are married or not. Lutz and Claudia answer together. They got married just now. Josel nearly loses control, yelling that marriage is serious, and asking if they are mocking him. Claudia cheerfully says it matters whether she is married to Lutz, while Josel scolds them for living together without marriage. Gerhardt's warning echoes in his mind show them. Respect, and Josel clenches himself back from yelling again. Josel remembers Gerhardt warned him. They were fairly eccentric, then smacks his own forehead and forces himself to endure without too many retorts. Lutz and Claudia stare in confusion as Josel suddenly looks moved, thanking his master's teachings for saving him from snapping. At last, Josel points to sword on table and names it Night Killer. He asks why Lutz made it, and Lutz feels dangerous answer. Because he hates Knight's Rise in his mind before he swallows it. Josel clarifies he is not there to prosecute him. He only wants exact motive behind Blade, and Lutz realizes Josel came all this way for that alone. Josel insists Night Killer reaching him, high-ranking knight, cannot be coincidence. Lutz and Claudia know painfully well that it was, but Josel keeps pressing, convinced fate gave him this blade so he can learn how to live and what to do. Their only answer bursts out in panic. Live however he wants. Josel slams both hands onto table and begs for truth behind Blade's creation. Lutz and Claudia recoil, unable to grasp what he is even chasing. Long silence falls over workshop until Lutz realizes Josel has somehow gone from deadly serious to complete romantic hand. He has no idea how to make him leave. Claudia steps in with calm confidence, promising to handle it by inventing whatever will send Josel home. Lutz, desperate, agrees. Clearing her throat, she begins explaining circumstances behind Night Killer's birth, claiming Blade was not born from Lutz's will, but that he was guided into making it. Josel jolts at word guided, demanding meaning. Claudia smoothly spins tail back to Borvis, saying everything began when Lutz finished katana for Gerhardt's close friend. That wonderful katana was culmination of Borvis' hard work, and Josel confirms he knows of it as Gerhardt's first apprentice. Claudia frames two blades as paired destinies. Sword specialist blacksmith Borvis forged katana, then katana specialist Lutz, inspired by him, forged sword. Night Killer and Singular Steel, she says, form pair in spirit. Josel processes logic and concludes Lutz held no ill feelings while making Night Killer, and Claudia answers with emphatic yes. Lutz quietly thinks real resentment toward Knights belongs to Claudia, not him. Meanwhile, Claudia makes story grander, describing Lutz crafting sword under Borvis' inspiration, losing control as if something entered his body. And before he knew it, Blade had been completed and named Night Killer. Josel starts to doubt claim of possession, and Lutz's face tightens as exaggeration goes too far. Claudia pivots again, asking why such fine blade lacks maker's signature. Josel admits any creator would want to sign it, then wonders why Lutz did not. With serene smile and folded hands, Claudia delivers final answer. Lutz could not engrave his name because Night Killer was God's work. Josel freezes. Lutz mutters in confusion, and even Claudia's own explanation grows so divine that someone off to side can only whisper, "Goodness me." Josel's imagination erupts into holy spectacle. Before shining divine figure, he trembles and roars at revelation. Night Killer was blade crafted by God. Claudia smiles beside stunned Lutz, while their desperate lie becomes sacred truth in Josel's mind. Back at table, Josel slams hand down, certain his hunch was right, and claiming he has never felt fate so clearly. Claudia plays along with easy "I know, right?" while Josel grips Night Killer and accepts that Blade's birth and arrival in his hands came from God's guidance. Lutz can only wonder how things turned this bad. Josel draws Night Killer with sudden conviction, declaring he hears voice of God. Lutz flinches, in confusion, while Josel raises Blade and interprets clan to protect Count not only from foreign enemies, but from his own people, even old friends, if they become enemies. Claudia nervously tries to address him as Mr. Josel. That fever burns out as fast as it came. Outside, Josel mounts horse and sweeps cloak wide, proclaiming his eyes opened and thanking Mr. Lutz and Miss Claudia for wonderful meeting before riding away. Lutz and Claudia stand silent, rattled by laughter and hoofbeats. Then Claudia worries, maybe she should not have dragged God into story. Lutz decides he will pretend not to be home if divine complaint comes knocking. After chaos, Claudia steps into stream and splashes cool water over herself, sighing that whole ordeal exhausted her. Nearby, Lutz rinses sweat away with bucket, grumbling that Claudia told Josel so many lies even he got uncomfortably sweaty. Claudia quietly feels day may not be over yet, and Lutz begs her not to jinx it. Lutz, still bathing in stream, asks Claudia to join him, but she snaps that she cannot go completely naked outside and calls him pervert. He insists nobody ever comes here and says it feels nice. Claudia gives in only slightly, saying doing it somewhere like this may not be so bad sometimes, while Lutz protests he never meant going that far. Claudia starts loosening clothes, only for Gerhardt's voice to ring through trees, calling for Mr. Lutz. She freezes in horror, skirt still in hand. Lutz turns bucket, shocked to find Gerhardt there, while Claudia trembles over how close disaster came. Gerhardt laughs that Lutz was not home, so he came looking, saying he needs to consult him about something. Before Gerhardt can explain calmly, his gloomy companion explodes forward, shouting that he wants to see his little demons wail. Lutz stares from water, stunned by name, while Gerhardt snaps at companion not to shout in his ear. Gloomy stranger lies face down in water, bubbles rising from blankied face. Gerhardt introduces him as Patrick, craftsman who ornamented Demon's Wail. Earlier that day, Patrick had barged into Gerhardt's room and begged to see Blade he once gave Count again. Patrick bursts from stream frenzy, screaming that Little Demon's Wail is greatest masterpiece he ever created, and begging to see that girl again. Lutz bristles, thinking he forged it, while Claudia points out that since Blade was gifted to Count, Patrick cannot exactly demand visit. Patrick knows that perfectly well, but his craftsman's blood keeps boiling anyway. Patrick's obsession only grows louder, as he cries that he wants to know how his sweet little angel is doing. Claudia realizes her bad feeling came true. After Josel finally left, an even stranger man appeared. Patrick clings to Gerhardt next, begging Count's most trusted craftsman to put in good word. But Gerhardt mutters that Count may favor him, yet some lines must not be crossed. Gerhardt imagines castle packed with grim nobles around smiling Count, and admits atmosphere there is already strained by favoritism. Asking such bold favor would make others explode. even if Count himself allowed it. He turns back to Lutz, saying he thought Lutz wanted help convincing Patrick to give up. But Patrick grins. Gerhardt does owe him one. Patrick reminds Gerhardt that he forgot to tell Count Patrick ornamented little demon's whale, so debt remains unpaid. Gerhardt falls silent while Patrick insists he must find way to repay him. Lutz calls that difficult person to owe, then admits while washing his face that he is curious how Patrick is doing too. Lutz's curiosity lights up. What shape did Demon's whale take after ornamentation? Gerhardt laughs in agreement, and Lutz says he would love to see it again. When Gerhardt adds that he even performed spell forging after ornamentation to make finer blade, Patrick recoils, then explodes, that Gerhardt is only riling him up more. Gerhardt snaps that Patrick sounds disgusting. But Lutz says seeing that katana again will not be easy since owner is noble. Sitting in stream, Gerhardt wonders how they can worship Demon's whale naturally without being noticed. Lutz, Gerhardt and Patrick fall into tense thought, all searching for impossible answer. Claudia steps in with simple solution, asking if they are serious. She says first-rate craftsmen should think of it at once. If regular appointment cannot be arranged, attack from different angle. Lutz realizes she is not suggesting another tall tale to Count, and Gerhardt remembers that approach worked nicely with Josel before. Claudia cuts through problem with bright confidence. If Count will not ask them to see his blade, they must create their own reason. Gerhardt catches on first, then points out they can offer maintenance on Demon's whale, and Claudia confirms that is exactly angle she meant. Patrick erupts with understanding, shouting that they can see little Demon's whale under guise of maintenance. Claudia accepts compliment with dry smile, but Lutz raises practical concern. Since Count does not use katana in actual combat, blade is unlikely to be chipped or damaged. Gerhardt pauses, then realizes maintenance itself may still be good idea if they can give Count valid reason. Gerhardt finds that reason in noble custom. Count sometimes attends social gatherings where weapon-loving nobles show off their wares, and he will surely bring Demon's whale to next one. Patrick sees path instantly. If gathering is coming, inspection beforehand becomes perfectly natural. Claudia says, all that remains is making Count accept proposal, though Gerhardt wonders whether Count will trust them with his beloved katana. From riverbank to castle, plan moves fast. Under bright sky and white birds, grand towers rise, and Count reacts with surprise when told they want to perform maintenance on Demon's whale. Count's face shines with delight. Gerhardt's thoughtful suggestion pleases him, and he agrees at once, saying blade must be perfect before gathering. Soon Demon's whale lands on table with heavy thud, before Patrick, Lutz, and Gerhardt finally return to hands of craftsmen who made it. Emotion overwhelms them. Patrick tears up at reunion, calling it like seeing daughter he sent away to marry, while Lutz stares at finished Demon's whale in awe. Gerhardt beams like proud parent, declaring their dear daughter as lively as ever. Lutz admits honestly that ornamentation never interested him much before. Lutz explains his focus always stayed on blade itself and how well it cuts ornate. Pieces often looked impressive to him but felt dull. Yet Demon's whale changes that. Holding sheath in both hands, he marvels that scabbard alone is so wonderfully made he would want it even without anything inside. And Gerhardt laughs that Lutz's perspective has shifted. Patrick trembles under praise, clutching Demon's whale while Lutz says first-rate blacksmith. Praising his work moves him deeply. Gerhardt studies blade itself, describing silvery white edge, delicate yet daring wavy pattern, and pale green glow of old engraved runes beauty so strong that simple word no longer feels enough. Patrick presses face, far too close to Demon's whale, screaming that it is true princess, until Gerhardt warns him not to breathe on it or dirty it. Lutz holds ornate sheath and admits Patrick's pride makes sense, though Patrick's behavior stays strange. Then Patrick draws blade in wild devotion, calling it little Demon's whale and begging it to cut him first, while Gerhardt yells for him to stop. With no scratch found, inspection ends. Demon's whale rests across table, untouched and flawless, while three craftsmen stand around it in heavy silence. Lutz smiles awkwardly, sad their group must disband already, saying he, Gerhardt and Patrick are best in their own fields. Gerhardt laughs that together they could make as many outstanding blades as they wanted. Patrick sees his idea with bright grin, suggesting they team up again and create new piece. It's powerful enough to surpass Demon's whale. Vision of supreme katana blazes before Lutz, but Gerhardt brings reality crashing down. Who would pay for production when gems alone used for Demon's whale cost enough to make Patrick shudder? Patrick admits. Ornamentation can also be expensive and says, project cannot begin without sponsor. Lutz asks if there is no clear way to take on challenge of creating that supreme katana. After pause, Gerhardt says they will get request after aforementioned gathering, making Lutz turn in confusion and ask how he knows. Gerhardt imagines gathering of weapon enthusiasts, where Demon's Wail will surely draw attention among nobles. If it becomes popular, someone may demand to buy it or order similar blade. Patrick instantly sees chance, declaring Demon's Wail may bring them sponsor, while Lutz doubts any noble would sell beloved blades so easily. Gerhardt explains, gathering is not simply about buying and selling blades. For nobles, it is chance to build connections, and giving up beloved blade can be small price for solid alliance. Lutz scratches head and realizes it is politics, then admits he dislikes idea of blades being used as political tools. Gerhardt only says Lutz is still young. Lutz pushes back, refusing to associate adulthood with being used or exploited. He wants to focus solely on forging blades, free of all that noise. Gerhardt stays silent, then Patrick steps in with hand on Lutz's shoulder, telling him not to be so stiff because none of them know what future holds. Gerhardt rests hand on Lutz's shoulder too and reframes politics as opportunity. If their new work is used for negotiations, then crafting blade wonderful enough to shake those negotiations could be amusing. Patrick watches from side as Lutz stands between them, forced to consider challenge beyond forge itself. Gerhardt grins at thought of blade strong enough to sway negotiations, asking what could be more fun than that. Lutz accepts spark of challenge with smile, and Patrick gladly joins in. Together, three craftsmen dream of someday making supreme blade, while Gerhardt notes result may depend on Count's ability to negotiate. Carriage wheels clatter down road. As Count travels with Demon's Wail at his side, he is relieved katana remains in perfect condition, but nerves still show on his face. When attendant asks if he is nervous, Count admits it, explaining that man has invited him to his castle. Count says greatest gain at gathering would be becoming friends with that man. Inside Glittering Hall, nobles turn toward tall, black-haired Marquis Beowulf, and Count hopes Demon's Wail catches his eye. Under moonlit sky, Marquis of Eldenberger holds dazzling ball at his residence. While dancers fill bright ballroom, some guests quietly slip away one after another, and Count Maximilian Xander follows, smiling tensely as he leaves noise behind. Unnoticed by rest, nobles step out of ball with same objective in mind. Count opens door with careful creak and enters separate room where chatter rises around displayed weapons. He has come to join gathering of sword enthusiasts. Count looks uneasy beneath rich ceiling, as narration explains noble balls and social gatherings are more than recreation. Nobles use them to learn upper-class trends, cultivate hobbies, converse, form connections, and strengthen standing and territory. In weapon enthusiasts' room, Count stands among nobles comparing blades, wondering whether this gathering is one of those key events. Nearby voices praise swords and mention skilled blacksmith rising in someone's domain. When asked what he thinks of sword before him, Count admits he is not good talker, but appreciates gatherings. A plump noble proudly flourishes sword he bought for 100 gold, boasting it is beautiful and perfect for him. Count forces polite smile, then asks to look because piece is truly fine. The noble brightens at Count's interest, hands it over, and declares Lord Maximilian clearly understands how great sword is. Count Maximilian moves through room full of nobles, eager to display beloved blades. Even if he is not smooth talker, praising someone's sword is easy enough, and shared love of weapons lets conversation flow. Then bespectacled noble notices him and asks if Lord Maximilian brought sword today. Maximilian sees opening and answers that he did. With careful pride, he declares he has blade worthy of showing to discerning gentlemen, then draws Demon's Wail before crowd. Plump noble laughs at bold claim, eyeing ornate katana and saying it looks impressive, but thin and unreliable. Criticism sharpens. Plump noble asks if such thin blade could really be useful on battlefield, while another man admits looks alone cannot decide worth. Maximilian grips hilt, knowing moment has come, and begins unsheathing Demon's Wail with quiet metallic click. Demon's Wail leaves scabbard, and wind explodes through room. Curving gusts slice through air around stunned guests, blowing clothes and hair as Maximilian stands calmly at center, blade drawn and presence overwhelming. Shock freezes room. Plump noble and bespectacled noble gape in panic, while Maximilian names blade Demon's Wail and asks what they think of his beloved katana. Around them, murmurs spread. Some guests have never seen weapons shaped like that, while plump noble shakes so hard he can barely start saying it is beautiful. Admiration bursts out of him. He cries that Demon's wail is lovely, fantastic, even erotic, then throws his own sword aside with a clang, declaring it nothing but stick compared to Maximilian's katana. Kneeling before Blade, he admits this is first time he has seen real thing, and claims he would not mind dying by it. Desire takes over. Plump Noble demands to buy Demon's wail, asking how much Maximilian wants, but Maximilian politely refuses, saying he has no intention of parting with it. Crushed, Noble slumps, then begs at least to wield it and look closer. Maximilian allows him, and man stares at Blade in tearful ecstasy. Closer look reveals deeper wonder. Guests notice 5 ancient runes engraved into Demon's wail, explaining its immense magical capacity, and doubt turns to awe as they realize power is real, not ornament. Maximilian trembles with contained pride while Room whispers one question. Where did Lord Maximilian find such blade? Maximilian stands amid murmuring nobles, basking in rare attention as Demon's wail turns every eye toward him. He finally understands why everyone flaunts blades here like rivals in contest. And as door creaks open, he silently praises Gerhardt's work, until heavy steps enter and a deep voice asks to see it too. Room freezes as black-haired Marquis Beowulf Eldenberger strides in with overwhelming presence. Shock ripples through nobles, and Maximilian's face tightens when he realizes very man he hoped to impress has appeared before him. Maximilian remembers his goal. No gain here would be greater than befriending Beowulf. Demon's wail has caught Marquis' eye, and panic mixes with hope as he greets Beowulf after long absence, while another noble loudly offers blade forward and begs him to look. Beowulf accepts with calm authority, saying he will have look. Maximilian politely allows it, while surrounding nobles whisper that if Marquis approves, Demon's wail's value may rise to national treasure level. With nervous pride, Maximilian declares its name and calls it finest piece in his collection. Beowulf's gaze hardens as he studies Demon's wail. What began as curiosity becomes hunger. He calls it fine katana, and thinks he wants it not merely to own it, but to swing it, to slay people with it, even to dismember enemies to his heart's content. Holding blade high, Beowulf asks why such unusual weapon is called Demon's wail. Maximilian smiles tensely and says he will understand once he swings it. Then Beowulf orders everyone to step back. Space opens around him as he raises katana overhead with fierce focus. Beowulf brings Demon's wail down in tremendous swing, and wind roars across hall like invisible blade. Gusts tear through air, shocking Maximilian and nearby nobles, as Marquis himself braces under force of weapons cry. Beowulf lowers blade with grim satisfaction and says he understands. This katana truly wails, hence name. Nobles praise terrifying wind magic, and Maximilian confirms it with strained smile. But inside he feels Shakendemon's wail has produced far better sound for Beowulf than it ever did for him. Maximilian's mind twists. Demon's wail into image of wife stolen by another man, wailing louder in Beowulf's hands than his own. He shakes himself back to reason, reminding himself it is katana, not woman, yet unease still grips him as Beowulf calls out, "Lord Maximilian!" Beowulf fixes hungry eyes on Demon's wail and asks Maximilian to sell him katana, promising any Presim castle. Nearby nobles erupt in praise, saying Marquis has approved blade, and Maximilian could never refuse such chance to build connection. Maximilian falls silent under weight of opportunity. Against all expectation, Maximilian refuses. He says he cannot sell Demon's wail, leaving Beowulf stunned and surrounding nobles asking why. With sweat on his cheek, Maximilian begins to explain that Demon's wail was made specifically for him. Maximilian explains blades. Length and weight were adjusted for his weaker strength, and wind magic was added to make it lighter. Beowulf gives it testing swing and admits it may be too light for him, but irritation flickers in his glare when Maximilian says he has suggestion. Maximilian offers clean solution. Have craftsmen who made Demon's wail craft Beowulf new katana tailored to his own liking. Nobles around them murmur in surprise, but Maximilian remembers Gerhardt's advice when asked about katana: steer conversation this way, so ties can form without losing Demon's wail. Beowulf smiles and accepts idea, calling it wonderful and urging them to do it. Then sudden thought strikes him. He stops, touches chin, and asks Maximilian to wait little longer before proceeding with request. Maximilian agrees there is no need to rush and offers to schedule it whenever convenient. Beowulf turns away, saying he feels tipsy and needs fresh air, then steps out while asking everyone keep enjoying themselves. Maximilian exhales in relief, thinking agreement somehow reached, though Marquis' pressure left him shaken. Under moonlit sky on balcony, Beowulf says what he will share must remain strictly confidential. He tells Maximilian war between royal army and southern heathen barbarians has dragged on 10 years, leaving border in turmoil. But peace talks are now moving behind scenes, and those skirmishes will soon end. Beowulf explains that church leaders once demanded conversion of heathens, but years of war forced them to reconsider. Since both sides gained nothing after so much bloodshed, armistice became only sensible path, though Maximilian carefully avoids saying anything that could sound like criticism of church. Beowulf moves to real problem. Barbarian custom demands exchanged gifts when enemies reconcile, and after bribing one of their leaders, he learned they plan to offer kingdom's special diamond called Overlord's Eye. Maximilian first calls diamond wonderful, but Beowulf cuts through optimism. Kingdom must offer something equal or greater in value, or barbarians will treat them as inferior. One wrong gift would spread shame to neighboring countries and make whole kingdom look weak. Beowulf admits he has spent weeks searching for answer vase, sculpture, treasured sword, anything that could match diamond. Then Maximilian begins to understand. Since kingdom initiated peace talks, they must respect other sides' customs, even tailoring gift to barbarian rulers' preferences. Beowulf's explanation darkens into strategy. Heathen allies have long used diplomatic gifts to grow their alliance, and they will surely nitpick anything from enemy nation to gain negotiation advantage. If kingdom offers wrong gift, failure becomes crack in its defenses, and that is why Beowulf turns his sharp eyes toward Lord Maximilian. Beowulf stands tall with Demon's Wail at his side, and declares circumstances require him to appropriate Maximilian's katana. Maximilian freezes, then forces out one crucial question. What does he get in return? Beowulf smiles. Surprised Maximilian asks payment instead of obeying quietly. In his mind, docile lamb reveals hidden fangs, and Beowulf respects it. Noble without fangs cannot be partner or accomplice. He offers free access to royal palace, and promises he will owe Maximilian favor if desired. Maximilian recognizes second offer may be useful, while Beowulf urges him not to demand anything too frightening, because he wants debt repaid quickly. Tension breaks into laughter on moonlit balcony, and by time they return, abandoned food and wine wait cold after long private talk. Back inside, Maximilian accepts losing written proof, but still asks for something in exchange. Beowulf recognizes another test and request, then decides some wagers must be made without guarantee, and calls for Maximilian to hear him out. On moonlit balcony, Beowulf draws Eldenberger family's treasured sword, saying many have seen it on battlefield. If he breaks his promise, Maximilian may take that blade and drag him to court with it. For Maximilian, sword becomes proof of Beowulf's sincerity, and he knows he must answer in kind. Maximilian steels himself and presents Demon's Wail, asking Beowulf to accept it. Beowulf pauses, then confirms whether Maximilian is sure, and Maximilian answers that they are making trade. Beowulf smiles and agrees. Maximilian asks to trade again once everything is over, and Beowulf promises to take good care of Demon's Wail and report any change. After handing over katana, Maximilian bows deeply while Beowulf watches him leave. Beowulf rests Demon's Wail on his shoulder, pleased by unexpected fine blade and even greater encounter. Meanwhile, Maximilian returns to crowded hall carrying Marquis, Beowulf's sword, wobbling under its weight and admitting it is heavy in more ways than one. Carriage rolls through night as Maximilian's attendant processes Marquis' words. He draws Eldenberger family's treasured sword with sharp zoom, confirming its identity, while Gerhardt sits nearby and studies it in silence. Inside carriage, Blonde Knight praises sword as formidable, possessing both beauty and strength. Gerhardt remains unimpressed to him. It lacks luster, and when asked if sword truly needs that, answer comes coldly, not really. Gerhardt explains function does not require beauty, and sheath carvings may be pointless, but then erupts. Blade meant to stay with someone until death cannot be merely sharp. As Maximilian sits without Demon's Wail, Gerhardt gently asks whether he feels lonely without katana, and Maximilian admits he does, especially since Beowulf is fierce warrior who takes to battlefield himself. Inside carriage, Maximilian imagines Demon's Wail crying joyfully in Beowulf's rough, powerful hands. Unlike when it belonged to him, shame twists into stubborn fire, and he vows not to lose one's home. He will train hard with Eldenberger's sword until he can master it better than Beowulf, though his sudden excitement leaves others startled. His training fantasy shatters when carriage lurches violently. Driver yanks reins, horse screams, and Maximilian, Gerhardt, and Blonde Knight slam forward with heavy cathunk. Outside, driver apologizes while Blonde Knight demands what happened, only to hear destination remains 4 days away. Road ahead lies blocked by massive fallen tree. Driver guesses someone left it as prank. But timing is too perfect right after secret meeting with Marquis Beowulf. As he steps down to clear it, Blonde Knight suddenly shouts warning. It is trapped. Danger spreads through Forest Road. Someone warns bandits may be nearby and orders non-combatants to stay in carriage. Gerhardt steps down anyway, while Blonde Knight promises Maximilian any bandits will be eliminated. And Maximilian answers with tense trust. Armored, long-haired guard lands beside carriage with calm force. Blonde Knight calls him Ricardo and tells him to keep guard up. And Ricardo answers confidently, blade in hand, ready to justify escort fee. Ricardo scans silent trees, while Blonde Knight feels relief, thinking Ricardo has become dependable since joining Maximilian's guard. Around Fallen Trunk, 3 fighters take positions, but Forest gives nothing back except heavy silence. Blades stay drawn as unseen bloodlust presses from woods. Blonde Knight senses killing intent but cannot see enemy. Asking where attackers hide, then something whooshes through air from blind spot. A thrown axe spins toward them and smashes near fallen tree, jolting guards into alarm. Gerhardt scoffs at crude attack, warning no cheap weapon will kill him. And hidden men finally reveal themselves with mocking laughter from Forest Edge. Bandits step from Forest with crude weapons raised. Already knowing Count Maximilian's carriage carries valuable sword. Their leader sneers that Little Bird told them about sweet prize, and his men grin as they vow to snatch it for themselves. Blonde Knight challenges them from behind fallen tree, demanding whether they attacked, despite knowing Count rode inside. One axe-wielding bandit snarls back not to get cocky, then rushes in only for Blonde Knight to cut him down in single brutal strike. Ricardo surges forward, ordering 2 others to protect carriage, while he fights bandits at distance. Enemy leader mocks him for trying to face them alone, and bandits charge after Ricardo, while Josel worries whether he can handle them by himself. Gerhardt answers that Ricardo will be fine, and adds it would be troublesome if Camellia started swinging near them. Hooded bandit lifts spiked mace to crush them, but Josel reacts with Night Killer. Blade flashes in open air, and mace wielder is cut down before he can land blow, leaving Gerhardt to bark that they should focus on remaining bandits. Josel steadies Night Killer with surprise, realizing it remains strong even in outdoor combat. Ahead, Ricardo stands before 5 bandits, and their leader sneers, asking whether he can handle all of them at once before offering to teach him difference between courage and recklessness, calling him Mr. Hero. Ricardo stiffens at nickname, realizing only people within Count's domain should know it. Suspicion sharpens, as bandits also know carriage belongs to Count, and that excellent sword is inside, gripping Camellia. Ricardo wonders what trouble Maximilian has gotten into, and whether attack was orchestrated by someone. Bandit roars and swings, but Ricardo slips past like blur. Steel flashes around attacker in crossing arcs, and when man curses Ricardo for dodging, nothing seems to happen at first until something wet hits ground. Ricardo turns away as delayed wound opens across Bandit's body, spilling blood in sudden burst. Calm and cold, he says he did not simply dodge, he cut him while moving. Asking whether Bandit even noticed, as wounded man collapses and blood spatters ground. Gerhardt moves faster than expected, drawing singular steel and slicing through attacker in single clean rush. Josel stares in shock and calls out to his master, but Gerhardt only apologizes, saying fight is finished. Hertho they wasted effort on needless work. Lie scattered across blood-soaked road, as Josel questions Gerhardt's complaint. Gerhardt explains that every man fell from one swing, because people can die from well-placed shallow cuts. There is no need to get carried away and split them in 2. Josel admits singular steel cuts, so well he became too excited, while Gerhardt leaves remaining enemies to Ricardo. Ricardo grips Camellia with cold focus, declaring that if he loses, Gerhardt can claim Camellia for himself. He sizes up enemy leader's long axe and longer reach, then calls out to Camellia, demanding it wake up. Camellia answers like apparition. A dark-haired womanly figure blooms behind Ricardo, hair flowing like smoke as he stands calm between surrounding bandits. Katana lowered and presence suddenly unnatural. 2 bandits rush from behind, but strange pressure spreads from Ricardo and Camellia. Their charge slows as if something invisible washes over them, leaving them exposed before they can strike. Enemy leader senses something wrong with thin sword, claiming something strange comes from it. He feels as if woman's figure stands behind Ricardo and even says it smells sweet, then warns his men to stay sharp because that is no ordinary blade. Warning comes too late. One bandit presses his own sword against his neck and calmly draws blood, while others cry out in confusion. Madness spreads through group, and men begin hacking themselves apart, laughing and shrieking as blood sprays across Forest Road. Camellia's curse consumes them completely. Bandits stab themselves, smash weapons into their own faces, and laugh through blood while their leader watches in horror, eyes wide as his men destroy themselves under unseen influence. Road falls silent under corpses and blood. Bandit leader remains alive, trembling amid dead men, while Ricardo steps closer and notes there is still one left. Panic breaks him. He sees fallen men who somehow killed themselves and cries that everyone died in madness. Yet Camellia's womanly presence still coils behind Ricardo. Terror mixes with sick pleasure on his face as he mutters that it scares him, yet feels so good. Ricardo points Camellia at him and says pain must be unbearable after being teased by beauty only to be left hanging. He offers mercy if asked nicely, promising to cut him down with katana, and Broken Bandit drops to begging, pleading to be cut by her. Begging turns grotesque. Bandit opens his mouth in surrender, but Ricardo's eyes snap wide as sudden projectile screams through air. Bolt strikes Bandit first, splattering blood and cutting off his plea before Ricardo can finish him. Ricardo whirls toward trees, demanding who else is there. A robed man with crossbow stands beyond brush, far enough to stay outside Camellia's charm range. Ricardo measures distance at 10 meters and realizes enemy still has weapon, unlike crude bandits. Ricardo launches forward, deciding to close distance before crossbowman's second bolt. Trusting Camellia to end him first, he thrusts katana out and shouts for Camellia to get him. Camellia's spirit surges from blade, sweeping toward crossbowman in shimmering, terrifying beauty. The man freezes with eyes wide, but his hands still work crossbow, forcing Ricardo into race between charm and trigger. Bolt fires too late to save him. Crossbowman's head bursts in spray, while fired shot bangs off Ricardo's armor instead of killing him. Ricardo exhales in relief, thanking Camellia as her figure grins beside him. Ricardo survives and proudly thanks dependable partner Camellia. Gerhardt notices him alive, while soldiers clear fallen tree. Ricardo says Lutz spellforged Camellia and jokes he could call him father-in-law, but Lutz's name triggers colder concern when Gerhardt spots crossbow in Ricardo's hand. Gerhardt explains crossbow costs too much for common bandit hands. Attack feels planned. Someone informed bandits, armed them, and sent them after Count Maximilian. Ricardo looks down at dead man and regrets they should have kept one alive for answers. Maximilian cuts off regret, saying interrogation would be pointless. He doubts Mastermind revealed identity to bandits. Josel asks if they should chase culprit or inspect scene, but Maximilian orders road cleared and departure resumed. Josel freezes at Maximilian's calm smile, wondering if culprit will go free. He and Count seem to share same thought. Mastermind may be someone close. Carriages roll away through forest, wheels clattering as suspicion follows behind. Back in town, ornate sheath slams onto table before Lutz and Claudia. Patrick beams with pride, asking what they think, claiming their cute love letter has become even cuter. Claudia delights over Phoenix engraved into sheath, exactly as requested. Patrick confirms it, while Lutz watches. Claudia notes Phoenix should be lone legendary bird, then sees one on hilt and another on sheath. Patrick smiles and says reason is simple. Poor thing would feel lonely alone. 1 week earlier, Claudia and Lutz asked Patrick to ornament blade sheath. Patrick instantly saw romance in request, asking if Lutz forged it for his wife. Then Blade Tang appears with engraved words, "For you, my beloved." Claudia proudly says, husband loved her so much he engraved message on Tang, while Lutz panics and tells Patrick not to stare. Patrick murmurs precious, then collapses under too much emotion, calling it overdose of love, and saying he wants quit human life and become flower. Patrick declares love theme obvious. 2 immortal lovebirds belong on Claudia's Ikuchi. Claudia smiles while Lutz hums in reluctant thought, and Patrick urges her to draw blade from sheath. In Claudia's mind, even odd Patrick proves himself excellent ornamentist, worthy of her love letter. Blade slides free, pulling 2 phoenixes apart across hilt and sheath. When it clicks back into place, phoenixes meet again, making Patrick gush that they smooch every time blade is used. Claudia blushes at precious trick, Lutz stares flatly, and conversation has to be dragged onward. Lutz asks how Noble Gathering went, and whether Demon's Wail became popular. Patrick's smile tightens as he admits matters grew complicated. From above workshop table, truth drops hard. Count Maximilian was attacked, and attacker seems tied to his own castle. Patrick explains Maximilian had been watching servant who suddenly became wealthy, only to find him hanging by neck. Count had let suspect move freely to trace his contacts, but death erased Mastermind's trail. With body disposed of and case closed, Patrick admits he heard it secondhand and lacks details. Lutz questions danger of leaving someone with servant access roaming free, but Patrick says, Count likely chose silence over stirring trouble against person he could not punish. Then grief hits him. He slumps over table, dreary that people are dying over little demon's wail, while Claudia murmurs she never thought it would become so serious. Weight of situation lands on Lutz. If events keep moving, Contry's fate could be decided by demon's wail. Far away, nobles gather around vast round table, turning blade from craft into matter of state. At royal palace, Marquis Beowulf raises cup with controlled smile, while tension fills council chamber. Scrolls and goblets cover round table, and heavy silence breaks with formal thunder. King Radwald Walscheid opens meeting on upcoming peace talks with allied nations. An official reports enemy gift, Overlord's Eye, pink diamond size of fist. As negotiator, he has seen it firsthand and calls it gem unlike any other in world, drawing murmurs from nobles around table. Council sinks into unease after hearing about Overlord's Eye. One noble insists Castle has treasured sword spell forged with 5 ancient runes, but King Radwald shuts it down, saying he sold it long ago for gold. Murmurs spread as harsh truth hangs over chamber. Kingdom's finances are strained. War becomes reason for empty coffers. Constant skirmishes with allied nations forced kingdom to sell treasures to fund fighting, leaving them wishing they still had same treasure to end it. Then official reveals enemy envoy had more to say. Kingdom surely has another wonderful treasure to offer. Answer lands like thunder. Enemy wants Lady Ristel, third princess, as token of friendship between countries, gladly accepting her as their king's 5th wife. Nobles stare in shock, faces twisting at insult no one expected. Outrage erupts around table. One noble calls barbarians lowly for trying to take princess, while another admits royalty sometimes marries enemy for peace. Debate turns brutal as someone asks whether they should offer precious princess at enemy's demand. And Beowulf only mutters, weighing it all. Beowulf glances toward throne and notices. King remains silent. Radwald's hard expression says, what words cannot? He will not imperil kingdom just to protect precious daughter. For greater good of protecting kingdom, even selfish wish to save Ristel must stay buried. Beowulf breaks silence, saying King owes him chance to voice concern. He calls deal trap set by barbarians. Offering princess would be same as offering hostage, and he reminds council that Lady Ristel is only 13 before asking how old enemy king is. Official answers grimly that King Cassander turns 70 this year. Beowulf drives point home. No normal marriage could exist between them, and enemy king is old enough to be her grandfather. Another noble questions how age gap makes trap, but Beowulf says trap lies in her becoming 5th wife. Beowulf paints horrifying outcome. Innocent Ristel tormented by 1st through 4th wives. Then their protests rejected as interference in domestic affairs. Repeated protests and rebuttals would escalate into armed conflict, so giving up Lady Ristel would hand enemy spark needed to wage war. Beowulf rejects cautious doubt at once, slamming hand down and warning that if enemies act, response will come too late. He insists diplomacy demands courtesy even toward hated opponents, so kingdom must prepare for worst case or risk being stabbed in back. Council falls silent, as nobles admit Beowulf has point. But question remains. If princess cannot be offered, what gift can replace her? Beowulf snaps fingers and says he must use that, then quietly apologizes to Maximilian in his thoughts. Attendant carries wrapped katana into chamber, drawing suspicious looks from nobles. Beowulf introduces it as Demon's Wail, masterpiece spell-forged with 5 ancient runes, and table erupts in shock at blade appearing before king. Nobles murmur in disbelief that Beowulf owned such weapon. They wonder what kind of sword it is, and whether barbarians would truly be impressed. Beowulf stays silent, then steps forward with Demon's Wail in hand as attention tightens around him. Beowulf presents Demon's Wail to King Radwald, asking him to look. Steel slides from sheath with clean ring, and King's eyes widen as blade catches light with fierce, undeniable brilliance. Radiance of Demon's Wail wins over watching nobles. Voices praise magnificent blade, some even saying they would love to own it. Yet King asks whether it can match Overlord's Eye, and Beowulf admits he does not know, because it depends on opponent's eye for value still. He has another plan if they judge blade inferior. King Radwald's face hardens as he asks what alternative plan remains, and whether Beowulf has any treasured possession besides that blade. Beowulf lowers his gaze, then answers with calm confidence. Your Majesty. Vision of Lady Ristel flashes with bright resolve as Beowulf promises to protect her without fail. Demon's Wail settles back into sheath, and King Radwald claps once, appointing Marquise Eldenberger to handle negotiations with barbarians from now on. King Radwald grants Beowulf free access to treasury and tells him to do as he wills. Beowulf bows with firm acceptance, then looks up sharply, sensing weight behind King's trust. Radwald's private words reveal truth beneath crown. He does not want to sacrifice his daughter, and he is counting on Beowulf. Beowulf reads those eyes as father's plea, not king's command, and swears that he, Beowulf Eldenberger, will live up to his majesty's hopes. At Royal Army garrison near border, armored Beowulf steps into sunlight with sword at side. Soldiers and tents fill camp around him, watchtower rising over rocky ground, until startled official calls out to him. Beowulf arrives on horseback and says it is about time. Across camp, makeshift tent already stands where Royal Army and Allied Power Army face each other across roughly 5 kilometers of tense borderland. Beowulf enters tent with curt pardon, but blonde envoy greets him with polished smile. Beowulf immediately judges him no simple messenger. Strong, handsome, and irritating enough that Beowulf wants to punch him. An aide whispers warning before temper wins, identifying smiling man as Arsames, second prince. Beowulf silently decides he cannot punch Prince, while both sides take seats across wooden table, and Arsames proposes verifying gifts before official signing date. Beowulf presents prepared gift first, lifting ornate katana and naming it Demon's Wail. Arsames answers that allied nation will offer Overlord's Eye, and servant sets covered box on table for inspection. Cloth falls away, and Overlord's Eye floods tent with blinding shine. Beowulf stares at gem's size and brilliance, admitting it deserves its name, yet doubts enemy king would surrender something so valuable merely to gain young bride. Beowulf sees trap clearly. Enemy values Lady Ristel far above Diamond, meaning they plan to exploit her position as princess. Refusing to hand her over, he presents Demon's Wail instead. Arsames studies unfamiliar curved blade, and Beowulf invites him to swing it. Certain sword's name will make sense once felt. Arsames accepts and swings Demon's Wail in sharp arc. Wind roars from blade like spirit song, tearing across ground and leaving observers stunned. Sweat beads on his face as he admits. Swing feels as if he cut through heavens itself. Another slash sends white force howling through air. Beowulf asks whether Arsames enjoyed wielding it, while bespectacled official trembles and concedes Demon's Wail is wonderful. Catanite hesitation remains. Arsames smiles with Demon's Wail still in hand and declares blade falls slightly short of Overlord's Eye. Panic hits Beowulf's side gift failed to satisfy them. Arsames then repeats original demand, proposing Princess Ristel be sent to them, because his father, King, would gladly accept her. Beowulf stops him with raised hand and admits Demon's Wail falls short, then promises to offer even greater blade by day deal is signed. Arsames asks whether such blade already exists. Beowulf answers honestly, not at moment, then enemy side reveals uglier pretexting Cassander is looking for new bedmate. Pressure spikes, but Beowulf doubles down. He declares they can make greater katana, one that will please King Cassander. Arsames' smile fades into wary silence as Beowulf invokes craftsmen who can forge blade beyond Demon's Wail. Under turbulent sky, Arsames questions promise. Katana to please King Cassander, surpass Demon's Wail, and meet their conditions. Beowulf answers with absolute certainty, refusing to retreat. Beowulf boasts of truly capable craftsmen, though privately admits he has not met them. Arsames watches, then studies Demon's Wail again, conceding its irresistible charm. Though Princess was their main goal, katana surpassing even this might stand equal to Overlord's Eye. And personally, he would love to see such peace. Arsames reveals colder scheme behind smile. If Beowulf's side fails to craft katana they promised, enemy can blame their carelessness, demand Princess Ristel again, and drive kingdom into corner. With that leverage, he intends to strip kingdom bare. Chapter turns to Princess Ristel. Inside ornate bird-filled chamber, fitting title, The Princess in the Birdcage. Cages hang around her, birds flutter through arched palace room, and young princess sits quietly beside water and flowers like captive creature herself. Elsewhere, tavern noise rolls on with clattering mugs and laughter. Around game board, Lutz, Gerhardt, Patrick, and another seated man discuss whether foreign king would truly be pleased with demons. Whale worry rises that if he calls it unfit for real swordsmen, negotiations may fail. Gerhardt tosses die and explains next danger plainly. If Demon's Wail is rejected, their side must present new katana, and that is how order will reach them. Lutz admits surpassing Demon's Wail sounds tough, but Gerhardt insists they can do it, slamming peace down as he vows to spellforge 5 runes into any blade Lutz makes. Gerhardt laughs off limits, claiming earth, water, fire, or wind matter little to him. Patrick says Lutz has skill to back it up, while talk turns toward Messenger soon arriving with negotiation results. Lutz grows impatient to hear enemy king's order, then asks whether magic has elements beyond 4. Patrick casually adds light magic to list, describing it as power used on undead, slowing their regeneration rather than destroying bodies outright. Lutz turns to Gerhardt and checks whether Fivaroon Light Magic Blade would be acceptable if requested. Gerhardt bursts into wild laughter, leaving Lutz and Patrick confused. As Patrick warns that Gerhardt acting strange is serious, Lutz realizes spellforging light magic must be far harder than expected. Gerhardt snaps close to Lutz and shouts that Fivaroon light magic is not difficult, is impossible. He explains spellforging engraves ancient runes into blade. More runes mean more power and more difficulty, and light stands apart from other elements. Even best effort might only manage 3 runes, making any request for light magic major problem. Tavern door creaks open, and uniformed messenger strides in asking for Master Gerhardt. Gerhardt answers, "That's me," while Lutz and Patrick turn from table. Messenger reports negotiation outcome with allied nations, then tension lands heavy, as he says their king has requested something. Request crashes down like thunder. A magnificent blade, capable of splitting earth, spell-forged with 5 runes of light magic. Gerhardt freezes at table. Patrick chokes on drink, and Lutz stares in disbelief as impossible condition reaches them. Messenger explains Envoy's logic with stiff formality. Allied king is sun incarnate, so worthy blade must carry light magic. Then he delivers Beowulf's own words, and Beowulf's face looms in memory, trusting craftsmen behind Demon's Wail and urging them to pour souls into this katana. Night settles over city, but tavern table sinks into chaos. Gerhardt gulps drink after drink, refusing to stop, while waitress nervously asks whether enough is enough. Lutz tries to quiet him, but Gerhardt roars he cannot drink after hearing demand like that. Gerhardt slams mug down and explodes. Fivaroon light magic blade is beyond him, he shouts, and if envoys do not know light is far harder to spellforge, then negotiations can rot and war might as well begin. Lutz and Patrick only stare as Gerhardt orders every last bottle of wine. Gerhardt's despair leaves game abandoned. Lutz says their match is over, though he was winning, while Patrick sets aside idle pastimes and faces truth. Kingdom's fate hangs by blade, and despite unreasonable demand, they cannot back away. Key to impossible challenge rests with Lutz, man who must forge katana itself. Patrick bites into food and promises to pour every ounce of craft into ornamentation, but warns all effort means nothing without blade, strong enough to anchor light element. He turns calmly to Lutz and asks him for fine katana, while Lutz remembers vow to back Beowulf and feels full skill being tested far sooner than expected. Pressure crushes Lutz as die drops and slides across game board. He mutters stakes did not need to be so dire and wonders why God could not grant more balanced challenge. Patrick answers without drama. Lamenting changes nothing. Die rolls to stop, and fate has already been cast. Back at Palace, Beowulf apologizes to Count Maximilian and promises to return Demon's Wail. Though it proved not quite suitable enough as gift, it caught enemy attention, and Maximilian receives beloved katana with tearful relief, welcoming Demon's Wail home. Beowulf laughs that he is glad to have his own treasured blade back too, joking his ancestors would have scolded him in afterlife if he lost it. When Maximilian suggests having Gerhardt cast spells on that heirloom sword, Beowulf refuses, saying tampering with blade passed down through generations does not sit well with him, and besides, he wishes to possess katana of his own. As Maximilian realizes Beowulf has grown interested in katana, and Beowulf admits Demon's Wail was not first to steal his heart. Decades ago, when his father was still only Marquis, blacksmith came to castle with strange sword as offering and demonstrated its edge by cutting stone, helmet, armor very thing cleanly in two. Beowulf reveals truth. That strange sword was katana. He had been so captivated by Smith's mastery that he even wanted man hired as family blacksmith. But when elder brother tested blade, it broke enraged. Brother branded blacksmith fraud, and their father banished man from Marquisate to save brother's honor. Young Beowulf could not accept it and confronted his father, insisting man was first-rate blacksmith and must not be let go. Yet father only answered that life can be unfair, then judged katana sharp but arrogant, leaving Beowulf unable to understand until he pressed for meaning. Beowulf. Father explained flaw with calm severity. If swung vertically, blade could sever anything, but real combat never allowed perfect precision. Katana had been forged not for wielder, but to flaunt Smith's prowess. By that measure, he said, piece made only for demonstration was unworthy of martial lineage while Demon's Wail, sharp and practical, held fine balance between cutting edge and power. Maximilian assumes craftsmen will again forge perfectly balanced masterpiece. But Beowulf rejects easy confidence. This job's circumstances are utterly singular, and ordinary methods will never produce katana capable of surpassing demons. Wail to meet unreasonable demand, they need unreasonable passion. Beowulf admits burden is cruel for craftsmen he has not even met, yet wants them to pour extraordinary passion into blade. Far away, Lutz grips steel with tense eyes and demands strikes like drawn edge. Task borders on sheer arrogance. Workshop door creaks, and Claudia steps in as Lutz raises newly forged katana to light. She asks how it turned out. Lutz studies blade with uneasy silence before admitting it is not bad, at least on surface. Closer look strips away comfort. Lutz says blade is solid, yet bland. With no resonance and soul to him, it feels like lump of iron forced into katana shape. When he drops it into discard box, Claudia notes this is already third failed attempt. Lutz sinks beside anvil, worn down before steel and bellows. He admits he was never enthusiastic about job from start, because katana will be used as political tool and likely never wielded. Without heart, soul, and passion, he cannot truly forge it. Claudia quietly asks whether he wants people to use blades he makes. Claudia pushes point with theatrical flair, saying Lutz wants fighters to prove his blades in real combat and shower him with praise as world's best. Lutz concedes she is not entirely wrong, only badly phrased. When she suggests deciding concept first like Demon's Wail and Night Killer, he blurts concept is simple. Magnificent katana, thick and tall. Claudia leans in and snaps that she is not talking about shape. Claudia climbs close, tapping Lutz's forehead as she explains core of katana design. Decide whom blade is meant to slay. Lutz repeats question in shock. Images of past blades answer her point love letter for killing thugs who assaulted Claudia. Demon's Wail for protecting Count Maximilian from bandits. And Night Killer for slaying knights in confined spaces. As Claudia says katana is tool for cutting people down, Josel barges into workshop and freezes at their intimate pose, calling it shameless. Voices explode around building. Claudia cries out his name. Josel demands to know what they are doing in broad daylight, and Lutz protests that he is trying to forge katana. Josel regains mission and tells Lutz Count Maximilian has summoned him, so Lutz must accompany him. Lutz argues he is busy forging requested katana, but Josel says he knows circumstances and still has no choice he won, calling for Lutz ranks even higher than Count. Name lands with force. Third princess, Lady Ristel. Claudia guesses, princess only wants to check progress before becoming that pervert king's hug pillow. Then twists warning into joke if Lutz botches blade. Ristel will truly get hug pillow treatment. Josel explodes, ordering her to mind tongue when speaking of princess herself. Josel cuts off argument and orders Lutz to come with him, because her highness's command is absolute. Outside, Claudia hurries after them, insisting she can come too. When Josel objects, she reminds him she is Lutz's wife, and asks whether it is only natural to bring one's wife to solemn audience. Lutz stays quiet, still caught on Claudia's earlier question, who he wants this katana to slay. As carriage rolls toward palace, Lutz wrestles with problem in silence. Clear image is needed, yet katana is gift for foreign king, and Lutz has never even met that king. Before he can find answer, palace door slides open with sharp sound, revealing young Lady Ristel waiting beyond. Inside Grand Hall, Josel presents swordsmith Lutz and his wife Claudia, summoned by Lady Ristel's request. Lutz studies princess from below and thinks she looks almost doe-like, while huge guard beside her radiates far more intimidation. Nearby, Gerhardt and Patrick sit stiffly, clearly summoned as well, and looking uncomfortable. Lady Ristel warmly asks Lutz how katana work is progressing, but Josel snaps that Lutz must not address Her Highness directly and should speak through him. Lutz bristles at upper-class formalities, then leans in to mutter answer into Josel's ear. When Josel asks if he truly wants that relayed, Lutz can only admit princess may prefer something more optimistic. With loud bang, Lady Ristel rejects protocol herself, declaring this informal audience and granting Lutz permission to speak directly. Given chance, Lutz falters through report, and princess leans forward to ask how long until blade is finished, and whether it will turn out well. Lutz cannot dress truth up. He says progress is not looking good, and admits he has not even settled on real direction yet. Lady Ristel goes pale, but still thanks him and tells him to keep up good work, her forced composure making silence heavier. Only then does Lutz notice Princess trembling. She tries not to show fear, but her clenched hand shakes so hard, it drips sweat burden of kingdom presses on child too young to bear it. Lutz ruffles his hair in shame, feeling pathetic for letting her down. Beside Lady Ristel, huge guard fixes cold stare not on Lutz, but on his own disheartened master. Lutz realizes gaze feels like measurement, as if guard is sizing Princess up rather than guarding her, and Claudia's alarmed face shows she senses something wrong too. Lutz pieces together ugly truth. Lady Ristel is being treated as living gift for enemy king. An armored brute beside her is not there to protect her, but to keep her from escaping. Rage tightens in him as thought of adults forcing all responsibility onto young girl makes him sick. That anger finally gives Blade purpose. In Lutz's mind, Katana flashes through crowd of scheming nobles, soldiers, and kings. He wants to cut through every petty calculation, slay them all, and save Princess. Shock ripples through hall as Lutz suddenly thanks Lady Ristel with fierce intensity, clenching fist, and declaring she has given him clear image. Princess can only blink in confusion, unsure how to answer his strange gratitude. Momentum carries Lutz straight out. He calls for Claudia, bolts through doors, and ignores protests behind him. Josel shouts that Lady Ristel has not granted permission to depart, while guard fumes at rudeness and Princess hurries after them. Claudia catches up and turns back before leaving, smiling brightly as she declares every girl in world has right to fall in love, regardless of status or duty. When guard snarls at her for speaking out, Claudia answers that her husband, Lutz, will protect that right for Lady Ristel. Then Claudia slips behind door with perfect merchant polish, apologizing as simple country wife ignorant of court manners. Guard steps forward in anger, but Lady Ristel orders him to leave Claudia be, reminding him his only duty is to guard her. When Guard claims Claudia's attitude was contemptuous, Princess dismisses charge coldly. Lady Ristel calls to Gerhardt instead. Though Lutz and Claudia's words and actions lacked courtesy, she says she felt genuine concern from them, then asks whether Gerhardt believes Lutz can forge true masterpiece. Gerhardt answers that Lutz looked as if he had received epiphany, it excited and determined. Gerhardt calls that look sign of new peace being born, and Lady Ristel accepts it with quiet hope. She decides to trust them for next 2 months and wait, then smiles softly, tension easing at last. Back at Forge, Lutz raises hammer with wild resolve and slams steel hard enough to scatter sparks. Every blow carries same desperate vow. Lady Ristel has trusted him with her fate, and he cannot answer that trust with hesitation. His anger sharpens into purpose. Lutz curses nobles and knights, who treat Princess like object, curses war that forces burden onto 13-year-old girl, and even curses himself for making her tremble with doubt. If asked for magnificent katana, then he will make one. Hammer keeps falling. Lutz swears to forge blade that shatters injustice in rotten world. Each clang turning outrage into edge, each strike driving away helplessness he felt before Princess. At last, concept becomes clear. Lutz no longer cares that katana is gift for foreign king, or that he may never know wielder. If this job breaks his principles, so be it this time. He will craft world's greatest blade, one that cuts through whatever he wants cut. Night deepens outside, yet hammer song continues under moon. Lutz pours all his rage into katana until exhaustion finally drops him flat beside anvil. Claudia finds him sprawled on floor and asks how this one turned out, and Lutz answers with tired grin that it should at least be enough to wipe away girl's tears. Claudia steps closer to inspect finished blade, but surprise overtakes her face. She stops cold and asks what this thing is, then demands whether Lutz has lost his mind for thinking of handing over katana like that. Lutz insists he is perfectly sane. Claudia, still worried, says she is going outside to try swinging it a few times, and asks if this is truly okay, because that katana already looks wrong in ways she cannot ignore. Outside workshop, Claudia draws blade with great whoosh and its sheer size dominates yard. Long, heavy, and absurdly oversized, katana curves through air like monstrous crescent as both stand beneath it. Even Lutz can only admit problem aloud. It is way too gigantic. Lutz measures absurd weapon with nervous pride. Blade runs 30% longer than standard and weighs 3 times more, so even he doubts he can swing it. Then grin breaks across his face. This katana was crafted for idiot. Claudia stares, sensing overwhelming power from blade, and finally understands why Lutz looks so pleased. Lutz hefts monster blade and names its target in rough terms. Fellow like this can cleave anyone in two, knight or noble alike. He warns Claudia to brace herself because swing might blow her away, then tightens both hands around handle with heavy scrape and breathes out under strain. One swing erupts like storm. Blade carves wild arc through yard, wind exploding outward as Claudia flinches and leaves scatter. Even she admits power is amazing, like blinding flash, sweeping away all his pent-up anger. After blow, Cost hits him. Lutz yelps in pain, arms throbbing as Claudia rushes over and says he overdid it. He admits it felt like his arms would come off. And blade is not meant for ordinary person. Claudia imagines Ricardo, Joselle, even Gerhardt struggling with it, then concludes wielder may as well be giant. Still, Lutz cannot hide satisfaction. It may not be for everyone, but its power is beyond question. Raising huge katana towards Sun, he declares one swing was enough to prove it. This is greatest piece he can forge right now. Claudia smiles and praises him, saying, rest now lies with Gerhardt and Patrick. Lutz agrees, but as she calls him to dinner and rest, strange pull grips him. Blade remains in his hands, sun flashing along edge, and thought rises before he can stop it. He wants to try swinging it one more time. Again, katana roars through air with crushing sound. Claudia turns back in alarm, warning Lutz to stop before he ruins his arms. But he stands there transfixed, whispering that it is amazing. Power floods Lutz's body instead of pain. He feels strength welling up the moment he swings, heartbeat pounding as blade answers him. Then katana cuts through air again and again, huge edge, whooshing like storm-made steel. Lutz keeps swinging huge katana, but last stroke lands different. Weight crashes through his body and echoes deep in his gut, leaving him sweating, wide-eyed, and strangely thrilled. For breath, he wonders if katana is lending him power, then rejects that idea. As blade whips again and Claudia watches in alarm, Lutz realizes it feels more like weapon is stripping away his limits, same sensation of having his senses robbed. Memory snaps into place. Lutz remembers gripping Camellia, and excitement overtakes caution as he raises oversized katana overhead. Claudia shouts his name, fear breaking through as he prepares another reckless swing. Power surges too far. Lutz fights blade with clenched teeth until strain finally drops him to one knee, katana planted in ground. Claudia rushes to his side and scolds him, asking why he kept swinging so stubbornly when something was clearly wrong. Lutz admits he does not fully understand, only that wielding it felt similar to when he held Camellia. As aura swirls around blade in his explanation, he realizes strength wells up inside him while holding it. But source is his own body. Claudia catches meaning at once. He himself is source. Lutz confirms this katana does not grant power, it forcibly draws out wielder's own strength. Back inside workshop, Claudia sets down water bucket and recognizes pattern. Lutz has made another enchanting blade. She worries whether giving such thing as gift is acceptable, but Lutz says no charm spells will be cast this time, so it should not become like Camellia. Besides, for king called Sun Incarnate, making katana as bright as sun was unavoidable. Concern shifts to Lutz's battered arms. Claudia warns business is finished if he cannot use them, but he says they will heal in couple days. His work here is done now, so he will leave rest to Gerhardt and Patrick. Elsewhere, Gerhardt and Patrick discuss Lady Ristel. Patrick gushes that she is adorable little girl standing on tiptoes, desperately pretending to be grown-up while Gerhardt listens in stern silence, giving him no answer as workshop shelves loom around them. Patrick's admiration for Lady Ristel goes too far, and Gerhardt snaps at him to watch his tongue, because she is still royal princess. Yet Patrick keeps shivering with delight, praising her noble birth as twice as nutritious, until Gerhardt grudgingly mutters that even he would not mind becoming her grandpa and giving her pocket money. Patrick lunges close in instant agreement, declaring no girl in land is more worth spending money on than her. Gerhardt shoves him back, irritated, then forces topic away from princess worship and asks whether Patrick has decided how to ornament katana. Patrick brightens at once, saying he has settled on motif, dragon soaring boldly towards sun. Patrick explains that weapon ornaments usually circle around dragons, tigers, lions, or phoenixes, so he can work from those motifs once Lutz brings finished piece. Gerhardt admits there is nothing left but waiting and wonders whether Lutz has finished his part right before sharp knock at door cuts through room. A voice announces that Lutz has arrived, and Gerhardt orders him let in at once. Lutz steps inside, carrying wrapped katana, greeting them after long time, while Patrick practically flies forward, calling finished blade his new lover. Lutz calmly says, this one feels more like boy, but Patrick insists, gender is little more than word, and demands to see how he looks. Wrapped blade comes down on stand with heavy crash, and its huge shape silences room. Patrick gasps at sheer presence. Gerhardt stares with stunned disbelief, and Lutz stands between them with awkward confidence as Gerhardt admits it looks splendid. While Patrick declares this child unmistakably boy, Gerhardt's mind immediately turns dramatic, picturing massive warrior holding blade with overwhelming force. He says it is far from merely boy, more like man among men, with size and presence surpassing even singular steel. Patrick happily notes how thick and impressive it is, while Lutz smiles and reminds them of slogan, through blades, unity, leaving Gerhardt wondering what they are even saying. Business returns with warning. Gerhardt praises Lutz for producing something so bold, but Lutz raises hand and tells him not to swing it. Katana has way of possessing wielder, forcing arms to keep moving until they give out. Lutz admits that, when he held it himself, he became so entranced that he swung far past his limits. Gerhardt understands at once. Blade is rowdy brat. Patrick gleefully accepts that as fine because it makes Katana rowdy lad, then sweeps into new vision. Original ornament plan must change to match weapon sun blazing brighter. Dragon far more muscularis. Patrick raises blade and imagines monstrous dragon roaring beneath radiant light. Patrick swings oversized katana in feverish glee, laughing that theme is simple. Might is power. Lutz and Gerhardt watch in uneasy silence. Lutz whispers whether ornamentation can truly be left to him, and Gerhardt admits Patrick has skill, though even he grows nervous when Patrick gets this worked up. Mood flips an instant. Patrick's grin sharpens into craftsman mode, and he asks Lutz and Gerhardt to leave for today because work must begin. Heavy pressure fills room, leaving both men stunned. Lutz realizes this sudden change must be Patrick's true artisan face, while Gerhardt accepts it and says they are counting on him. At doorway, Gerhardt still warns Patrick not to swing katana. Patrick says he knows how terrifying it is, but Gerhardt repeats warning with deadly seriousness, and even says he will tell apprentices too. Patrick answers with pride. Swordsmen swing blades, but ornamentalists merely gaze upon them lovingly. Night settles over workshop, and Patrick starts from raw pieces. Wood shaves away under tools with steady clacks, curls piling around bench as he shapes fittings by hand. His smirk shows delight, not fatigue, as rough material begins turning into something worthy of monstrous blade. Patrick handles rings, cord, and grip with reverent care, calling katana his adorable masterpiece and promising to clothe it in perfect dress. Yet sweat slips down his face as thought intrudes. Armor might suit this weapon far better. Tools spread around huge blade beneath lamp glow. Patrick vows he will make that armor, because only he is worthy of task. Chisel bites into surface, dragon scales emerge in fine cuts, and sun ornament cracks into shape as his hands race through night. Shavings mound on floor, and Patrick's eyes widen with hunger for final touch. He laments having no name to call katana by, then bends over desk and urges his nameless son to become even more beautiful. By morning, apprentices peek in and ask if they may enter. Patrick answers yes, saying he has only just finished. He lifts completed work in blazing pride, declaring without doubt that this is his finest creation to date. Patrick basks in apprentices' praise, as completed fittings gleam across desk. They hail him as second to none, and he grins through sweat, asking whether his son is handsome. All three apprentices rush to agree, though their faces betray awe, fear, and confusion at Master's eccentric devotion. Admiration turns dangerous fast. Patrick leans over desk and wonders if one swing would be fine, sending apprentices into panic. They shout that Gerhardt strictly forbade it, but Patrick's hand already creeps toward hilt, as he insists he may never get chance like this again. Patrick's eyes go wild. Calling himself father, he declares he must swing his son at least once, and apprentices realize he has gone past pervert mode into berserk mode. Before anyone can stop him, he snatches katana up and charges forward, yelling that no one can halt father's love. One forbidden swing answers with brutal truth. With sharp crack, Patrick's shoulder gives way, and cries for master tear through room. Later, Gerhardt hears report in grim silence. After dislocating shoulder on first swing, Patrick still tried to keep going with other arm, so apprentices had to pin him down. Despite chaos, Patrick's work is finished. Apprentice brings wrapped katana to Gerhardt, saying Master completed his part superbly in only 1 week. Gerhardt studies package with stern respect, then sighs that Patrick hurt himself despite every warning. When covering comes away, completed sheath commands room. Dragon surges toward blazing sun across scabbard, creating whole world around weapon. Even Gerhardt admits Patrick's strange mind produced masterpiece worthy of blade itself, and now responsibility passes to him. Gerhardt prepares spellforging circle, placing greatest katana and large gemstone within ritual space. Energy rumbles around him, but his expression tightens. Requirements stand ready, yet doubt rises heavier than magic. Pressure crushes Gerhardt's confidence. Staring at katana, gemstone, and impossible task, he admits he cannot do it. No matter how complete preparations are, he cannot imagine himself succeeding at all. Gerhardt's hands tremble over blade, hammer, and chisel shaking as if body refuses ritual. He groans that he cannot move, then thinks of Lutz and Patrick, knowing they poured everything into katana and left no flaw in their work. Yet hands seem to cry out warning. As things stand, he will not succeed. Answer gnawing at Gerhardt becomes clear. Gemstone. It is channel meant to pour magic into blade, and merchant had spared no expense buying finest gem money could find. Still, for merciless light element, even that jewel feels insufficient, and Gerhardt's tool drops against table with dull tack. Gerhardt scratches head, sighs and stares at glowing katana, knowing hesitation will get him nowhere. Forcing ritual by luck might make runes run wild and shatter blade. Worse, if that happened, he could never face Lutz again. Gerhardt's thoughts race through glittering jewels, but problem remains gemstone size. He recalls being told no magnificent gem exists anywhere in country, because if one did, nobles would already be fighting over it as gift material. Teeth clenched, he curses need for giant gemstone. Armored apprentice finally speaks up, saying he may have suggestion. Gerhardt glares and snaps at him not to open mouth then clam up. After tense pause, apprentice explains he may know where to find large gemstone Gerhardt needs. Later, group gathers around table. Gerhardt reports that after some doing, His Majesty granted permission to use Overlord's eye though. Gerhardt says King more gave in than granted it. Lutz calls it great news, while memory of king and court shows everyone looking stunned when plan was first raised. Claudia says all they can do now is pray for success, because failure means losing all blades. Lutz accepts risk as long as Princess can be protected, adding that at least they get to keep Camellia. Thought of Ricardo clinging to Camellia proves point. If foreign king ever unsheathed it, disaster would erupt. Talk shifts to Marquis Beowulf, current negotiator with allied nations. Outside camp, he hears plan to use Overlord's eye for spell forging and stares in disbelief, asking if priceless gift will be treated as raw blade material. Then his face hardens into same look others once wore, and he answers with one sharp word. Yes. Inside negotiation tent, Beowulf explains logic without flinching. Light element spell forging needs enormous magical power, so craftsmen naturally reached Overlord's eye. Prince Arsames sits silent, and Beowulf reads that look at Arsames knew crafting 5-rune light magic katana was near impossible, yet challenged them anyway. Beowulf snaps his fingers while holding back irritation. He knows Arsames dared to humiliate them, but admitting ignorance would only wound their own side. Instead, he presses forward, saying Overlord's eye will guarantee success, while silently preparing trap. If Arsames objects, Beowulf can ask how else such blade should be made. Observer across room smiles and accepts, forcing Arsames to move next. Arsames asks what happens if spell forging fails. Beowulf answers boldly. They will offer their most prized bladesman's whale plus 3 more masterpieces by same swordsmith, each one national treasure. Beowulf declares their craftsmen will not fail. But Arsames smiles back and agrees to use Overlord's eye only under new condition. If ritual fails on appointed day, they must accept one more demand on top of those blades, and Beowulf's calm cracks for first time. Overlord's eye appears in mind, shattered as price of gamble. Arsames frames extra condition as penalty for sacrificing their precious gift. Beowulf fears they mean to demand Princess again, but they have come too far to retreat. At last he accepts, and allied nations, consent is obtained for public ritual at signing ceremony. Day of signing ceremony arrives in packed valley. Armies, tents, wagons, and crowds flood sacred venue. Claudia and Lutz stare as more people keep arriving, while guards complain that thousands have gathered where peace itself will be decided. Tension thickens among soldiers. One guard points out allied troops are mix of small nations with different tribes, cultures, and values, some barely better than outlaws. Claudia notes business would be hard with crowd like that, while party approaches special tent prepared for spell forging ritual, where Gerhardt already waits inside. Lutz and others slip into tent and ask Gerhardt how preparations are going, but answer comes as overwhelming presence. Gerhardt stands ready in full force, arms crossed, cloak and hair surging with pressure, while fragments and ritual tools glint around him like storm before strike. Inside ritual tent, circle, tools, hammer, and chisels sit ready around Katana. Lutz says Gerhardt looks all set. An armored man answers that Hero is absent today because he serves as Count's bodyguard. Lutz jokes that having Hero guard anyone may be scarier, but Gerhardt laughs it off, saying no situation should need that bewitching blade. Since others have no special duty, he tells them to sit back and watch him work. Though Lutz senses Gerhardt is tense beneath excitement, Gerhardt admits he keeps calling each new job his greatest piece, but says that is how craft should be. Each creation must reach higher than last, until he can honestly call newest one his best. Claudia burns with competitive spirit, wanting to shock King Cassander with truly amazing katana. While others note King Cassander should arrive any moment, heavy steps announce allied rulers' arrival. King Walscheid and Marquis Eldenberger receive King Cassander. Beowulf watches from side, and finally sees sovereign of allied nations with own eyes. King Cassander strides forward like living fortress, towering with thick armor, beard, and warrior's build. He greets King Walscheid with formal honor, while Beowulf stares in disbelief, wondering if this man can truly be in his 70s. Cassander's taut skin, bulging muscles, and iron grip crush every image of frail royalty. He shakes King Walscheid's hand like seasoned warrior, and nearby soldiers murmur in awe while Beowulf realizes rumors about Cassander. Draining youth from women may not feel entirely absurd. Beowulf presents katana for spell-forging ritual, and Cassander asks to inspect it. Blade slides free with soft swish, and Cassander lifts monstrous weapon effortlessly, praising its length and weight as impeccable. Beowulf asks if blade pleases him, and Cassander answers yes without hesitation. Then his warrior instinct breaks through, as he asks to test edge and orders someone to bring prisoner, shocking dignitaries, until advisor begs him to stop such jokes. Cassander pauses, remembers peace conference, and offers apology. King Cassander studies katana and admits blade is already magnificent, then presses harder. They mean to bestow magic on it too. Beowulf sweats under that gaze and asks where Overlord's eye is, only for Cassander to say it is with him. Confusion breaks as Cassander pulls massive gem from his own robes, right in front of everyone. Panic erupts. Cassander tosses Overlord's eye with casual force. Guards lunge, and one armored man barely catches priceless gem before it hits floor. Cassander laughs, grips katana again, and declares he is counting on this blade of his to become even greater. While blade awaits finalization, ceremony moves to signatures. Cassander tries to rush signing along, but King Walscheid reminds him. Ceremony is main event, not katana. 6 copies are placed before him, to be shared between kingdom, allied nations, and observing empire, while King Walscheid quietly weighs Cassander as inscrutable man. Cassander finishes signing and asks confirmation. Beowulf stands across from him as formalities close. But Prince Arsames steps in with cool warning that allied side should be more in sync. Cassander leans close and cuts him down with one question. Is this all he has got? Cassander's anger spills out in front of soldiers. He asks whether 10 years of war, paid for with gold and lives, will end with scraps of paper and empty draw. In his view, true victory would have meant taking their princess and controlling region, but instead they offered only katana. Arsames argues that allowing overlords, changed balance. Spellforging blade already worth national treasure will raise its value even further, forcing them to offer another gift if scales no longer favor them. Cassander grimaces at trouble, while Arsames says they pushed enemy side too hard. Arsames presses cruel confidence into full smile, insisting spellforging is bound to fail. Then failure can be used to hold them accountable, seize princess and land, and call it complete victory for fallen soldiers. Cassander falls silent, thinking Arsames has grown arrogant from praise as master negotiator, and that enemies may not be as naive as he believes. Across platform, Beowulf senses strange atmosphere and agrees they probably think they have already won. Pressure lands on craftsmen now. If they cannot present promised katana, kingdom's honor will be stained forever. Overlord's eye gleams beneath cover as Beowulf's resolve hardens kingdom's dignity rests in their hands. Overlord's eye draws everyone in. Lutz stares at massive gem. Patrick pokes near it in awe. An armored apprentice calls its pink glow almost mystical. Patrick ruins reverence by comparing it to giant areola, so Claudia sharply tells him to shut up. Gerhardt snatches gem away and ends viewing, ready to begin work, while armored apprentice rushes to help. Before ritual can start, nobleman calls out to craftsman from across tent. He warns that failure is not option and says country's future is at stake. Armored apprentice snaps back that if gem breaks and blade is not produced, even their deaths will not make up for it, and both men immediately flare into petty status war. Argument grows louder as royal guard demands apology, while armored apprentice fires back that he is not even guarding king right now. Lutz can only mutter in exhaustion. Then, allied beastman with scarred face approaches Lutz with easy grin, explaining kingdom knights always try to one-up each other over dumb things, like foxes arguing over better fur. Claudia quietly realizes even allied side inspector has come to speak with Lutz. Scarred beastman introduces himself as Gwyn and calls Lutz interesting. Lutz answers politely, naming himself swordsmith. Behind them, bickering knights keep trading blows, while Gwyn asks if Lutz forged blade their leader liked so much. When Lutz confirms it, Gwyn invites him to visit allied nations once a fair ends, saying powerful clans would gladly welcome someone with his skill. Lutz declines for now with tense smile, saying he appreciates offer, but cannot consider it yet. Gwyn accepts rejection lightly, admitting immediate pestering was annoying, then says he looks forward to Lutz's next piece and may try speaking with ornamentalist too. As Gwyn leaves, Claudia turns serious and tells Lutz he must think carefully about what he will do next. Claudia lays out new reality. Because Lutz's work was chosen as diplomatic gift, his name will spread far and wide as man of great value. Fame may bring elite invitations, but also danger from scoundrels watching him. Lutz listens in silence as she warns that life may no longer continue without protection from someone powerful. Lutz tries not to agonize, wondering whose patronage he should seek now that everything grows complicated. Claudia grins and reassures him that no matter who he chooses, she will stay by his side. Lutz smiles back, quietly accepting her support, while knights behind them keep roaring and crashing through their pointless fight. Gerhardt finally loses patience. He slams both noisy men down, stands over them with fists raised, and orders everyone to stay in their corner and watch quietly if they want him to succeed. With Tent forced into silence, he declares ritual begins now, and Overlord's eye gleams at center of spell circle. Gerhardt sets katana beneath Overlord's eye and taps blade with Spellforger's tool. Power rumbles through ritual circle as Lutz and Claudia watch in tense silence. Lutz wonders if katana can endure such magic, while Gerhardt stands before Kingdom's hopes and begins spellforging ritual of century. Elsewhere, celebratory banquet sits heavy with silence. Kings, nobles, and envoys eat under strained peace, but every face stays guarded. Cups rise, knives cut food, and no one seems able to forget war has only just been signed away. One black-haired official grips knife and sweats, thinking banquet is meant to celebrate, yet tension could be cut with blade. King Cassander offers wine to King Walscheid, asking how he finds it, and saying he would be honored if Kingdom's people drank it too. King Walscheid answers that it is delicious, and hopes to serve it to his own people someday, while Prince Arsames smirks, seeing no need to force connections here. Arsames imagines broken katana and smiles into cup. If spellforging fails, Kingdom will owe allied nations massive debt, and he plans to use that debt as leverage for better terms in future negotiations. His fork freezes at sudden tack, but his resolve stays cold. He will not let 10 years of soldiers' deaths and war go to waste. King Cassander reaches for Arsames' untouched food and says he will take it if Arsames will not eat. Arsames politely allows it, then admits Cassander is even more formidable than rumors suggest. King Walscheid judges Cassander as perfect owner for Blade, while Cassander says offered treasure may be too grand, and imbalance may require another return gift. Arsames panics as Cassander brings up imbalance himself. King Walscheid turns question back to him, and Cassander says everything depends on how Katana turns out. Only then will he decide what to do about imbalance, leaving Arsames furious that man who called problem troublesome now seems to enjoy it. Back in Ritual Tent, Gerhardt keeps striking as magic roars around Blade. Outside, someone tries to calm fear, saying it will be fine and no other gift will be needed. But Gerhardt's thoughts sharpen into dread. If that blade is fated to shatter, it will break into 1,000 miserable pieces under his hands. A sharp crack cuts through ritual. Observers jolt, wondering if blade has split, but steel still holds against torrent of magic. Lutz realizes truth with horror. Katana is enduring, and Overlord's eye itself is fracturing. Gerhardt keeps tapping runes into steel, sweat pouring down his face as Overlord's eye cracks in his hand. Fractures spread through gem with sharp crick sounds, and Lutz realizes danger. If gem's cracking hides sound of steel breaking, entire spell-forging ritual will fail. Ritual circle rattles violently. Blade shakes under flood of power, and everyone watching stiffens in fear. One man warns Katana will not last at this rate. Another says he has never seen anything like it, and Claudia sees blade trembling before Gerhardt screams for it to shatter. Cracking noise bursts out from ritual tent and carries across valley. Messenger inside banquet tent gasps for breath, and both kings turn towards sound. Curtain snaps open as report arrives. It is about Katana. Banquet freezes. Messenger reports to King about Katana, and King Cassander immediately asks if it is finished or perhaps not. Messenger swallows hard, unable to answer cleanly under everyone's stare. Outside, armies hear awful noise from tent direction. Rumors ignite at once. Did something happen to Blade? Did they fail? Did Kingdom mock allied nations by failing to deliver promised gift? Allied soldiers shout about insult and another war, while Kingdom soldiers bristle and curse them as barbarians. Tension nearly breaks into violence, but King Cassander steps out before soldiers can move further. His presence alone halts allied men, and he spreads his arms with booming cheer, declaring today fine day to end peace conference. Then, without warning, he announces dance for everyone present, praying for prosperity of both countries. Confusion ripples through ranks, as soldiers wonder why dance comes now and what happened to Katana. Then Cassander draws blade, and brilliant light floods battlefield. Katana shines in his hand, dazzling soldiers who thought ritual had failed. Soldiers stare in awe, asking if ritual succeeded, but another voice realizes truth. Blade is not merely reflecting sun. Katana itself is glowing. Cassander lifts it high, then brings blazing weapon down with a heavy grunt as its light swells into overwhelming force. Cassander swings Amaterasu, and roaring light tears across battlefield. Soldiers recoil as blazing trail hangs in air behind Blade, realizing shining power is not fading, is leaving light in its wake. Power wraps around Cassander himself. Blade blazes, cloak whips, and soldiers stare upward in awe, saying not only Katana but King Cassander radiates light. To them, it becomes King's blade in truest sense. Cassander raises Katana high, and its name is given, Amaterasu, name of Eastern deity. Someone declares it perfectly fitting for such blade. Then allied troops begin lowering themselves one after another, startling Kingdom soldiers who shout that allied men are all kneeling. Kingdom side watches in disbelief, wondering if those so-called barbarians show loyalty to King. Allied soldiers murmur that Cassander is too cool, while he stands tall beneath blazing sky, Amaterasu lifted like sun. Behind him, troops bow and onlookers can only laugh at how completely display worked. Lutz, Gerhardt, and craftsmen celebrate with raised fists. Lutz proudly says everyone acknowledges their blade as peerless treasure, while Gerhardt calls it his greatest work yet. Patrick goes further, flushed with joy, calling it no mere divine instrument but something beyond that, while Beowulf glares at their reckless excitement from side. Beowulf's frustration hardens as cheers rise around Cassander. In his eyes, display made allied king look like figure from legend, and home king like minor character. He decides such imbalance cannot stand unless they receive suitable gift in return. Inside tent, Cassander praises Amaterasu as sun incarnate, perfect symbol for absolute king. He says holding it feels like victory itself. Yet Prince Arsims remains dark and silent, so Cassander asks why he still looks dissatisfied. Beowulf steps forward with royal party behind him, smiling as he notes even allied soldiers acknowledged Amaterasu as treasure beyond Overlord's eye. Then he asks what kingdom will receive in return. Arsames grits his teeth, caught by demand now that Blade has surpassed all expectations. Arsames sweats through defeat, thinking even their countless treasures cannot match Amaterasu. Before he can escape situation, King Cassander cuts in beside him and offers land instead, shocking nobles around table into asking if he truly said land. Cassander smiles like man who has already chosen his price. He names very land, both countries coveted, and bled over for 10 years, calling it suitable gift. King Walshide glances aside, then gives calm nod, and peace talks move forward with no objection. Arsames explodes at his father outside. Unable to believe Cassander would surrender territory their warriors defended for 10 years. He calls it land drenched in blood. But Cassander only answers that if no gift could match Blade, ceding land was their only option and that war had always been about it. Cassander's face turns grave as he rejects Arsames' logic. Blood already shed has no value now, he says, and responsibility for bloodshed belongs to rulers themselves. Yet from distance Arsames seethes, muttering that traitor ended everything like he sold territory for new Blade. Night falls over camp, and Lutz sits with Claudia while wagons and tents settle under stars. Someone wonders if Kingdom has won war, but Gerhardt doubts outcome is that simple. For Lutz, enough is clear. Katana is complete, Princess is protected, and he is content with how things turned out. A sudden rustle makes Lutz and Claudia jump. Lady Ristel steps from shadows with guards behind her. Smiling as she admits, she watched quietly because she needed witness her own fate. She thanks Lutz and his companions, while Lutz and Claudia stare in surprise at Princess before them. Under wide night sky, Lady Ristel bows deeply to Lutz and Claudia with royal guards at her back. She gives final heartfelt thanks, while weary companions rest nearby, and Long Crisis finally loosens its grip around them.